When a reclusive artist meets a mysterious stranger who can control fire, her quiet world ignites with forbidden passion and danger. As their connection deepens, she discovers that the flame he carries is both life and death, a secret that could consume them both. To Fall for Fire is a haunting story of love that burns too brightly to last.
The city lay cloaked in a haze of ash and smoke, streets slick with the residue of countless fires that had marked its tortured history. Here, love was no gentle bloom, but a dangerous spark, a flame that devoured those who dared to ignite it. Evangeline Hart moved through the labyrinthine alleys with a measured pace, her footsteps muffled by the dense layer of soot that blanketed the cobblestones. Clutched tightly in her gloved hand was a small vial, its fragile glass containing the cold, grey ashes of a love extinguished far too soon, her first love, consumed by the city's cruel curse years ago. Her stormy grey eyes flicked nervously over the crumbling facades, every shadow a reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of desire. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke, mingling with the faint, bittersweet aroma of burnt wood and forgotten dreams. A chill wind whispered through the narrow streets, carrying with it the echoes of laughter and screams of passion and loss intertwined. Eva's layered clothing wrapped her in a cocoon of muted colors, each piece carefully chosen to shield her from the unpredictable heat of the world around her. Underneath her cautious exterior, a fierce intelligence flickered, a mind constantly calculating, weighing risks. Seeking a way to survive in a city that punished the heart's most vulnerable beats. Not far away, Rowan Wells stood amid the charred remains of a recent blaze, the air still thick with the scent of singed timber and smoke. His firefighter's jacket clung to his lean frame, the fabric damp with sweat and ash. His unruly dark hair fell over intense green eyes that seemed to hold the flicker of embers. A silent testament to the fire that raged not only in the city but within himself. He toyed absent-mindedly with a matchstick between his fingers, the small flame dancing precariously before he crushed it out. The weight of his family's history pressed heavily on his shoulders, memories of loss etched deep into his bones. Of fathers and brothers taken by the same merciless flame that now threatened anyone who dared to love. Tonight, the city was unusually restless. Whispers of new combustions had spread like wildfire, fanning the flames of fear and suspicion among its inhabitants. Rowan's jaw tightened as he surveyed the scene, the faint glow of embers casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts along the cracked walls. Their paths converged at a smoky street corner, where the dim light of a flickering brazier struggled against the persistent gloom. Eva's breath hitched as their eyes met, her stormy gaze locking with his emerald intensity. In that suspended moment, words fell away, replaced by a charged silence heavy with unspoken pain and cautious hope. She recognized the guarded warmth in his eyes, a mirror to her own carefully concealed longing. Rowan saw in her the fragile strength of someone who had weathered loss yet refused to let it define her. Between them hung the invisible barrier of the curse, a whispering presence that promised both destruction and the possibility of something dangerously beautiful. The city's murmurs seemed to fade into the background as they lingered there, two souls caught in the delicate balance between fear and desire. A sudden spark from the brazier illuminated Eva's delicate features and Rowan's tentative smile, etching the moment into the fabric of the night. Neither spoke, yet the silent exchange forged a fragile bond, a beginning as tentative and flickering as the embers that warmed the desolate streets. Eva pulled her coat tighter, the vial of ashes resting close to her heart. Rowan glanced at the darkened horizon, steeling himself for the battles to come, both against the flames that threatened the city and the invisible fire that stirred within them. As they parted ways under the smoldering skies, the weight of the city's curse hung heavy between them. Yet beneath the ash and smoke, a faint glimmer of hope flickered, a promise that even in a world ruled by fire, love might find a way to endure, slow burning and cautious but fiercely alive. And so began their uneasy dance on the edge of devastation, where every glance held the risk of combustion, and every heartbeat was a measured step toward the possibility of connection. The night deepened, and the city held its breath, waiting to see if two wary souls could learn to fall in love without falling to the flames. The city streets were cloaked in a twilight haze, the orange glow of distant embers casting long shadows against the cracked pavement. Evangeline Hart moved cautiously, her steps measured and deliberate as if the very ground beneath her might ignite underfoot. The memory of her family's tragedy, seared into her heart like a brand, whispered warnings with every beat. She pulled her scarf tighter against the chill, the layered fabric a physical barrier, much like the emotional walls she had built over the years. Her thoughts drifted to the last time she had felt something like hope, a time before the curse claimed her first love, before the flames consumed the promise of a future. That loss had left her wary, reluctant to let anyone in, especially when the stakes were so perilous. Each glance, each word exchanged, was a calculated risk, a flicker of desire tempered by the ever-present threat of combustion. Across town, Rowan Wells sat in the quiet hum of the fire station, his fingers deftly spinning a matchstick between them. The small flame that danced at its tip mirrored the flicker of warmth he felt despite the cold reality of his family's history. Loss had shaped him too. The deaths that shadowed his childhood were a constant reminder of the curse's ruthless grip. Yet, unlike many, Rowan refused to surrender to despair. His role as a firefighter was both ironic and defiant. He battled literal flames even as he sought to protect himself and those he cared for from the metaphorical ones. Their paths had crossed only briefly, but the tension between them crackled with unspoken understanding. Both bore scars invisible to the world, yet deeply felt in the spaces where love and fear collided. The city's curse was a cruel master, demanding sacrifice from anyone who dared to love. Still, in the cautious glances and tentative smiles, there was a fragile hope. Mira Solis, vibrant and unyielding, watched her best friend with a mixture of frustration and affection. The cafe she owned was a sanctuary amidst the city's smoldering despair, a place where laughter and warmth dared to exist. Her bright red hair and colorful scarves were a bold contrast to the grays and blacks of the outside world. She believed fiercely in love's resilience, often urging Eva to take emotional risks, to challenge the fatalistic beliefs that held so many captive. "You can't live wrapped in fear forever," Mira said one afternoon as they sat over steaming cups of coffee. "Sometimes you have to let the flame burn, even if it might singe you." Eva's gaze dropped to her hands, the small vial of ashes nestled in her palm, a weighty reminder of what was at stake. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "One wrong move, and it's not just my heart that burns." Meanwhile, Detective Elias Thorne pored over stacks of case files in his dimly lit office. His dark hair, streaked with gray, fell over sharp features etched with years of skepticism and quiet compassion. The curse was more than folklore, it was a deadly enigma he was determined to unravel. Each new clue, each tragic incident, added layers to the complex tapestry of the city's suffering. His investigation was a thread weaving through the lives of those caught in the curse's grip, including Rowan, whose family history was intertwined with unsolved combustions. Thorne's resolve was fueled not only by duty but by a personal connection that lent urgency to his work. As Eva and Rowan met again, beneath the flickering street lamps, the space between them was charged with unspoken words. Their eyes held a mirror to their shared pain and the tentative hope flickering between them. "We have to be careful," Eva said softly, her voice barely above the whispering wind. "I can't lose anyone else." Rowan nodded, his green eyes steady despite the turmoil beneath. "Then we take it slow, measure every step, set boundaries." Their agreement was a fragile pact, a dance around the edges of danger and desire. In that moment, they were not just two souls burdened by a curse, they were two hearts daring to connect, even if only in cautious flickers. Evangeline Hart sat on the weathered wooden bench beneath the skeletal branches of the park's oldest oak, the faint chill of early evening settling in the air. Her fingers trembled slightly as they traced the delicate contours of the small vial clutched in her palm, a vessel containing the ashes of her first love, a painful relic of the city's cruel curse. The vial was cold against her skin, yet inside burned an ember of memory she couldn't extinguish. Around her, the city murmured softly, distant footsteps, the hum of traffic, and the whisper of wind stirring the fallen leaves. Eva's stormy grey eyes darted to the vial and then away, as if afraid that looking too long would ignite something beyond control. The fear that had defined her existence since that tragic day was a constant companion, a shadow lurking behind every heartbeat. To love was to burn, to lose was to combust into nothingness. And yet, beneath her carefully layered defenses, a fragile hope flickered, a desire to connect, to feel, to risk. Across the city, Rowan Wells moved through the dimly lit streets, the orange glow of street lamps casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks. His lean form was silhouetted against the night, unruly dark hair tousled by a gentle breeze. His intense green eyes scanned his surroundings, always alert, always protective. Tonight, however, his mission was different, not battling literal flames, but tending to the small fires of humanity. He knelt beside an elderly neighbor's broken fence, tools in hand, and began to work with steady, practiced movements. The old woman had worried aloud about the fence's dilapidation, and Rowan's impulsive kindness had driven him to fix it despite the late hour. The street lamp's glow warmed his sun-kissed skin, and for a moment, a genuine smile softened the tension etched into his features. The curse was a shadow that loomed constantly, but in moments like this, defiance took shape in quiet acts of care. Meanwhile, at Mira Solis Cafe, a vibrant oasis amid the city's smoldering anxiety, the atmosphere buzzed with life. Bright scarves hung in colorful clusters from hooks on the walls, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the soft notes of a guitar playing in the background. Mira's lively hazel eyes sparkled as she encouraged Eva to lower her guard, to embrace the possibility of connection despite the risks. "You can't live your life afraid of the flame, Eva," Mira said, her voice warm and insistent. "Sometimes, to find out who you really are, you have to step into the fire, even if it burns a little." Eva's gaze flickered to the window, where the smoldering streets whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. But Mira's words planted a seed of courage, and for a moment, Eva allowed herself to imagine a life where love was not a sentence to death. In a cluttered office not far away, Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over a desk strewn with maps, photographs, and weathered case files. His sharp features were illuminated by the flicker of candlelight, the grey streaks in his dark hair catching the glow. His eyes were tired but determined, scanning the evidence for patterns that might unravel the curse's ancient origins. The flame never fully seen, but always felt whispered through the city's veins, a sinister presence feeding on fear and passion. Thorne's investigation was a race against time, each discovery heavy with the weight of lives lost and futures at stake. As days passed, Eva found herself caught in the tension between desire and survival. Her heart ached with longing for Rowan, yet her fear of intimacy tightened its grip with every shared glance and hesitant touch. Rowan, in turn, struggled to balance his impulsive nature with the need to honor Eva's boundaries, his spontaneous acts of kindness a testament to his growing devotion. One afternoon, as they crossed paths near Mira's cafe, Rowan reached out impulsively, brushing a stray lock of hair from Eva's face. The contact was electric and charged with risk. The invisible flame flickered dangerously close. Eva's breath hitched, and she stepped back, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and yearning. "I'm sorry," Rowan whispered, his voice thick with regret. "I don't want to hurt you." Eva swallowed hard, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in the quiet street. "I know," she said softly. "But it's so hard to know when to stop." That night, Eva lay awake, the vial of ashes resting on her bedside table like a talisman and a curse. Her mind replayed every moment with Rowan, the tenderness, the danger, the impossible pull between them. Could she trust her heart without losing herself? Could love be a refuge instead of a sentence? Meanwhile, Rowan wrestled with his own demons. The memories of his childhood, the faces of lost family members, the weight of his role as a firefighter tasked with controlling flames, all intertwined with his growing feelings for Eva. He longed to protect her, to shield her from the curse's cruelty, but he knew some battles were fought within. Mira's encouragement echoed in Eva's thoughts the next day as she met with her friend in the cafe. "You're not alone," Mira said, reaching out to squeeze Eva's hand. "We're all fighting the flame in our own way. But sometimes the greatest strength is in letting someone in." Eva nodded, a fragile smile breaking through her guarded exterior. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and passion, but she was beginning to see that love, even in a city cursed by fire, might still be worth the risk. At the same time, Detective Thorne uncovered fresh clues linking recent combustions to a pattern of emotional intensity, confirming that the curse was growing more volatile. His investigation intensified, bringing him closer to the truth but deeper into the city's shadows. The flame's whisper grew louder, threading through the lives of Eva and Rowan like a warning and a challenge. Their guarded hearts beat in tandem, caught between the desperate urge to connect and the instinct to protect themselves from the burning consequences. The city was a maze of shadows and smoldering light as the evening crept in, the sun dipping behind the jagged skyline, leaving a lingering glow that seemed almost reluctant to fade. Eva Hart stepped lightly onto the rooftop garden, her layered coat brushing against the cool metal railing. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint trace of smoke from distant fires still burning in neglected corners of the city. She pulled her scarf tighter, her stormy grey eyes scanning the horizon before settling on the figure waiting near the small cluster of potted plants. Rowan Wells leaned casually against the wrought iron bench, his dark hair tousled by the soft breeze, eyes glowing with that ember-like intensity she had come to both dread and crave. He offered her a tentative smile, the kind that spoke of warmth restrained, guarded. "You made it," he said quietly, voice low enough to blend with the hum of the city beneath them. Eva nodded, her fingers clutching the edges of her coat as if anchoring herself in place. "I thought it best to meet somewhere open, away from crowded streets," she replied, voice barely above a whisper, less chance of unexpected heat. Rowan's smile faltered slightly, understanding the unspoken meaning. In this city, love was a danger, a flame that could consume as quickly as it warmed. They had agreed no sudden movements, no reckless words, no unguarded glances. But the weight of that agreement was a constant ache between them. The garden was a small sanctuary hidden from the city's prying eyes. Around them, the plants' succulents and hardy herbs seemed to thrive in spite of the urban decay, a quiet testament to resilience. Eva found herself drawn to the lavender, running a finger along its dusty purple leaves, inhaling its calming scent. "You've done well," Rowan said, following her gaze. "This place. It helps keep the chaos at bay." She glanced at him, noting the flicker of something softer in his green eyes. "I wanted a place where we could be careful, where we could talk without fear." Their conversation unfolded in measured beats, each word chosen with care. They spoke of trivial things at first: the weather, the slow return of autumn's chill, but beneath the surface, currents of deeper emotion flowed, threatening to break their fragile dam of control. As night deepened, Eva's thoughts drifted to a memory she had tried to tuck away. She saw Rowan's face soften, and in that moment, she allowed herself a brief flashback, not of him, but of a man who had shaped the fearless firefighter Rowan was trying to become. The memory was vivid, a younger Rowan, standing beside his father, Jonas Wells, in the blazing heat of a controlled burn. Jonas's strong hands rested on Rowan's shoulders, steady as the fire crackled around them. "Respect the fire," Jonas had said, voice firm but kind. "It can give life, but it can just as easily take it away." You have to know when to hold back and when to let it burn. Rowan's eyes, even as a child, had mirrored the flames, intense, unpredictable, alive. That lesson had been etched into his soul alongside the sorrow of losing Jonas to a combustion incident years later. The loss was a ghost that haunted every step Rowan took, fueling his determination to protect others and to find a way to break the city's cruel cycle. Shaking off the memory, Eva pressed her fingers to the small vial. She always carried in her coat pocket the ashes of her first love, lost to the curse's merciless fire. The scent of smoke clung faintly to the glass, a bittersweet reminder of what she risked by opening her heart again. You think about him often, Rowan said softly, breaking the silence. His voice held no judgment, only empathy. Eva nodded, eyes fixed on the vial. Every day. He was my first. I thought I could never love again without burning. Maybe it's not about avoiding the fire, Rowan replied, stepping closer but keeping a careful distance. Maybe it's about learning how to live with it. The air between them thickened, charged with an unspoken promise and a dangerous pull. Their gazes locked, each searching the other's face for signs of retreat or surrender. The world narrowed to the space they shared, the faint rustling of leaves, the distant hum of sirens, the quickening beat of their own hearts. A sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, and with it came a tremor, a flash of heat that neither was prepared for. Eva's breath hitched. Rowan instinctively reached out, fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. In that fleeting touch, the city seemed to hold its breath. The sensation was electric and terrifying. The flame whispered at the edges of their consciousness, a cruel reminder of the deadly stakes. Panic flared in Eva's eyes as she pulled back, breaking the spell. Rowan's hand dropped, the warmth between them dissipating like smoke. "We have to be more careful," Eva whispered, voice trembling with the weight of what almost happened. Rowan swallowed hard, nodding. "I know. But I don't want to lose us because of fear." The rooftop fell silent again, the city below a sprawling web of light and shadow. They were two fragile embers, glowing faintly against the dark, caught in a dance between desire and survival. As they parted that night, a sense of urgency settled over Eva. The rituals they had created to protect themselves were necessary, but perhaps not enough. The curse was not just a threat, it was a constant presence, whispering, waiting. Yet, beneath the fear, a fragile hope flickered, a hope that with patience, restraint, and courage, they might find a way to kindle a flame that would not consume them. And somewhere in the city's restless heart, the ancient curse listened, its whispers growing louder, promising trials yet to come. The night closed around Eva as she made her way down from the rooftop, every step a careful negotiation between her longing and her fear. The embers in her heart burned quietly, daring her to believe that love, even in this city, might one day be more than a dangerous dream. But the question lingered in the smoldering air: could two cautious hearts truly defy a fate written in flames? And if they failed, what would be left but ashes? Detective Elias Thorne sat alone in the dim glow of his cluttered office, the night pressing quietly against the windowpanes like a silent witness to his obsession. Scattered across the worn wooden desk were brittle papers, faded city maps, brittle old manuscripts, and cryptic notes penned in hurried script. The faint scent of dust and old ink filled the air, mingling with the low hum of the city beyond. Thorne's sharp eyes, streaked with grey and shadowed by sleepless nights, traced the interwoven paths of past combustions, tragic events that had left scars on the city and its people. Each mark on the map whispered secrets of a curse older than memory, an ancient flame that had rooted itself deep in the city's heart. With a sigh, Thorne leaned back in his creaking chair, the weight of history pressing down on him. He had dedicated years to unraveling the mystery, to understanding the cruel mechanism that punished love with fire and ash. Tonight, a breakthrough flickered to life, a connection between the curse and a forgotten tragedy centuries past. This was more than a force of destruction. It was a shadow woven from fear, loss, and the desperate attempts of those who had come before to contain it. Meanwhile, not far from Thorn's dusty office, Mira Solis prepared for a different kind of battle. In the basement of her small cafe, she arranged candles and gathered chairs, transforming the space into a sanctuary against the city's oppressive dread. The air was warm with the scent of brewing tea and the soft murmur of whispered conversation. Mira's bright red hair glowed under the flickering candlelight, her lively hazel eyes sparkling with the fierce optimism that refused to be dimmed by the city's fatalistic grip. Tonight was more than a gathering, it was an act of rebellion, an underground celebration of love and connection amidst the ever-present threat of combustion. Mira believed in the power of community, in the strength found when hearts joined in defiance of fear. One by one, a small crowd trickled into the basement, faces etched with cautious hope and longing. Stories were shared, laughter broken by pauses heavy with remembrance, and for a few precious hours, the curse's shadow seemed to waver. Evangeline Hart found herself at the edge of this fragile gathering, seated quietly at a corner table. Her fingers toyed with a small vial of ashes, the last remnants of her first love, consumed by the flame years ago. The vial was a talisman and a torment, a reminder of all she feared and all she yearned for. Eva's stormy grey eyes reflected the soft candlelight as Mira's voice rose in an impassioned plea for hope and courage. Despite the warmth in the room, Eva felt the familiar chill of caution coiling in her chest. She had built walls around her heart, layers of protection woven from grief and fear. Yet tonight, something shifted, a delicate flicker of possibility that maybe, just maybe, love could survive the fire if nurtured slowly, carefully. Outside, Rowan Wells lingered in the cool night air, his tall frame silhouetted against the glow of the cafe windows. The city's smoldering streets stretched out before him, shadows dancing like restless spirits beneath the street lamps. His unruly dark hair ruffled in the breeze, and his intense green eyes flickered like embers as he watched the scene within, couples sharing warmth and laughter, a defiant flame in the darkness. Rowan's heart battled its own tumult. As a firefighter, he was intimately familiar with the destructive power of fire, yet here he stood, drawn to its symbolic warmth, and terrified of its promise. The curse had stolen so much from him, his family, his peace, and still, he dared to hope. Tonight was a step, small and tentative, toward a future where love might not be a death sentence. Back inside, Detective Thorne's cautious conversation with Mira laid bare the fragile threads of hope and danger. He spoke in hushed tones about his discoveries, about the ancient flame's origins, and the possibility that understanding it might offer a way to temper its cruelty. Mira listened, her eyes alight with resolve, and together they plotted a path forward not just for themselves, but for the city suffocating under the curse's weight. Eva and Rowan attended the gathering separately, each wrestling with their fears in the sanctuary of shared defiance. Though their paths had crossed only briefly before, tonight their spirits moved closer, bound by a common yearning and the tentative hope that love could be measured, controlled, and maybe, just maybe, survive. The flame, the curse itself, seemed to whisper through the flickering candlelight, a spectral presence felt but unseen. It was a reminder of the dual nature of love, its power to warm and to consume, to create life, and to deliver destruction. Eva and Rowan's journey was now intertwined with this whisper, a dance on the edge of embers and ash. As the gathering drew to a close, the city outside remained restless, its streets alive with smoldering secrets and whispered fears. But within the cafe's walls, a fragile hope kindled, one that dared to challenge the darkness, one measured moment at a time. The night's quiet defiance left Eva clutching her vial a little less tightly, and Rowan stepping back into the shadows with a heart a little more unguarded. The flame's whisper had not been silenced, but for the first time it was met not just with fear, but with courage. And so the city held its breath, waiting to see if love could truly find a way to burn without destruction. The evening air was thick with the scent of damp earth and faint smoke, a lingering reminder of the city's ever-present curse. Eva adjusted the scarf around her neck, the wool soft against her skin, but it was a shield as much as a comfort. She sat on the worn wooden bench beneath the yellow glow of a street lamp, her fingers curled tightly around the sleeve of her coat. Across from her, Rowan shifted uneasily, the faint flick of a matchstick twirling between his fingers betraying his nerves despite his calm expression. They had agreed to meet here, away from the crowded, volatile spaces where emotions ran too high and danger lurked. This park was a small pocket of calm, its shadows deep but forgiving, the benches spaced enough to allow quiet conversations and gentle touches without fear. Tonight, their pact to move slowly was more than words, it was etched into every glance, every careful smile. Rowan reached out first, his hand hovering briefly before brushing against Eva's fingertips. It was a small contact, a delicate spark that did not threaten to ignite but warmed nonetheless. Eva's breath caught, her stormy grey eyes meeting his intense green ones, shining faintly like embers in the night. One step at a time, he whispered, voice barely more than a breath. Eva nodded, her lips curling into a tentative smile. Measured moments. This was their new language, born from necessity and fear, but also hope, a way to say everything without risking everything. They exchanged quiet promises. Each word a carefully placed ember to nurture the fragile flame of their connection without burning down the walls they had built around their hearts. But even as the night wrapped around them in protective silence, Eva's phone buzzed softly against her coat. The screen lit up with a message from Leela. "Can we talk?" Now, Eva's chest tightened. Leela was her younger sister, fiery and fearless in ways Eva had never allowed herself to be. Where Eva was cautious, Leela was reckless. Where Eva hid, Leela confronted. She knew what this meant. Leela wasn't one to accept half measures when it came to the heart. Back at her apartment, the tension between them was palpable. Leela leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes blazing with a mixture of frustration and love. "Eva," she said, voice low but insistent, "you can't live like this. Holding back all the time, guarding every feeling like it's going to consume you. You deserve more than caution." Eva's hands trembled slightly as she folded the small vial of ashes she always carried, remnants of her first love, lost to the curse. "I'm trying to protect myself, protect us. But at what cost?" Leela challenged. "You re-alive, Eva. You can't let fear steal your chance at happiness." The words echoed in Eva's mind long after Leela had gone. That night, sleep was elusive, her thoughts tangled between the safety of restraint and the yearning for something more. Meanwhile, Rowan prepared a small gift. Wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, it was an old, worn book of poetry about measured passion and the art of cautious love. He had found it in a dusty bookstore nestled between the alleys, an ironic treasure in a city where love was a threat. When he handed it to Eva the next day, his fingers brushed hers again, this time with a confident warmth. "For us," he said softly, "to remind us that love doesn't have to burn bright to be real. Sometimes it's the slow, steady flames that last." Eva accepted the book, her eyes moist with gratitude and something else, hope. She knew the road ahead would be perilous, filled with moments of doubt and danger. But here, in the quiet exchange of words and gestures, she felt the stirrings of courage. Later that evening, standing by her window, Eva gazed out over the city. The skyline was dotted with the faint orange glow of distant fires, a reminder of the curse's ever-watchful presence. Yet beneath that flickering light, she saw something new, a fragile, flickering hope. Could their cautious love withstand the fiery trials ahead? Could measured moments build a fortress strong enough to contain the flames? Her heart ached with longing and fear, but also with a fierce determination. Tonight she would keep her promises. Tomorrow she might dare to make new ones. And somewhere deep in the city's smoldering heart, the flame whispered, watching, waiting, but also, perhaps, listening. As Eva turned away from the window, the embers of possibility glowed faintly within her, a promise that even in a city cursed by fire, love might yet find a way to burn gently, defiantly, and true. One step at a time, she murmured to herself, one measured moment after another. The night stretched on, thick with unsaid words and quiet hope, the city holding its breath between ashes and embers, waiting to see if love could survive. But as the clock ticked forward, the question remained, how long could two cautious hearts resist the blaze that threatened to consume them both? The answer, ever new, would come not in a single moment, but in the slow, deliberate dance of measured love. The city was unrecognizable beneath a shroud of terror that settled like a suffocating fog. News had spread like wildfire. Multiple couples had combusted within a matter of hours. The once vibrant streets, filled with cautious hope, were now crawling with whispers of dread and suspicion. In the city square, where people usually gathered for solace or protest, the air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of charred stone. Faces were pale, eyes wide with disbelief and fear as they watched the flickering flames that had claimed more lives that had dared to love. Evangeline Hart stood at the window of her modest apartment, the city's glow dimmed by the heavy smoke outside. Her hands gripped tightly around a small glass vial, the ashes of her first love, a tangible reminder of the curse's cruel reach. The vial felt impossibly fragile, much like her own heart. The memories came flooding back, the laughter shared on sunlit afternoons, the warmth of a touch that had ended in a blaze of loss. A shudder ran through her as guilt gnawed at her chest. Was she being selfish to even consider the fragile possibility of love again? The weight of history pressed upon her, threatening to suffocate the cautious hope she had begun to nurture. Meanwhile, Rowan Wells was trapped in the sterile, metal confines of the fire station. The irony was bitter. The man who fought literal fires, tasked with protecting the city from destruction, now powerless against the invisible flame of the curse. He flicked a matchstick between his fingers, the small flame dancing nervously in the dim light. Each spark seemed a cruel mockery of the fiery fate stalking the city's lovers. His mind raced through memories of his father, Jonas Wells, a man who had perished in the early days of the curse's resurgence. The weight of that legacy pressed heavily on Rowan's shoulders. He paced restlessly, frustration gnawing at his resolve. The curse was tightening its grip, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown to inevitable loss. Detective Elias Thorne's office was cluttered with reports, photographs, and maps marked with the locations of the recent combustions. His sharp eyes scanned the details, searching for patterns and clues that could unravel the mystery behind the curse's sudden surge. The case files were a grim mosaic of heartbreak and horror, each victim a testament to the city's tragic fate. Thorne's skepticism battled with a deep, secret compassion, a drive to protect the city and perhaps, in some small way, redeem his own failures. His investigation had taken on a new urgency. Driven by the fear that this outbreak was more than random, it was a sign of something far more dangerous stirring beneath the surface. In the midst of this chaos, Mira Solis refused to succumb to despair. Her cafe, a small oasis amidst the city's smoldering streets, became a beacon of hope. That evening, she stood before a modest crowd gathered among the warm glow of fairy lights and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Her voice was steady, infused with a fierce optimism that challenged the city's fatalistic grip. "We cannot let fear be the flame that consumes us," Mira declared, her eyes shining with conviction. "Love is dangerous. Yes, but it is also our greatest act of rebellion. Together, we can stand against this curse, not by hiding but by embracing what makes us human, our capacity to connect, to hope, to fight." Her words stirred something deep within the wary crowd, a fragile ember of defiance against the darkness. Back in her apartment, Eva wrestled with the storm inside her. The guilt of her past love's death clashed painfully with her growing feelings for Rowan. Each heartbeat felt like a gamble. Each glance between them a step closer to the edge of oblivion. The curse's shadow loomed large, whispering warnings in every flicker of flame, every racing pulse. Her phone buzzed a message from Rowan, simple and cautious. "Are you okay? We need to talk." The weight of the moment pressed down, heavy and unyielding. Could they find a way through the ashes and shadows? Or were they destined to be consumed by the very passion they sought to tame? As the city held its breath, caught between hope and despair, Eva and Rowan faced a choice: to retreat into the safety of solitude, or to risk everything for the fragile promise of love. The night stretched on, thick with smoke and silent prayers. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed a mournful cry that echoed the city's pain. Yet amidst the shadows and ashes, a spark remained, flickering stubbornly against the dark, and in that spark lay the fragile possibility of a new dawn. The marketplace was alive with the usual hum of early evening commerce, lanterns swaying gently in the breeze, casting flickering shadows on cobblestones slick with recent rain. But beneath this veneer of calm, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the crowd. A collective breath held tight in anticipation of the unseen danger that haunted every heartbeat in the city. Evangeline Hart moved cautiously between stalls, her layered coat pulled tight around her, eyes scanning the faces of strangers with a practiced wariness. Each smile felt like a gamble, each glance a potential spark in the tinderbox of her fragile heart. Rowan Wells watched from the edge of the square, his sharp green eyes tracking Eva's movements with a mixture of admiration and concern. He knew the risks better than most. His family's history was etched in the ashes of those who had succumbed to the city's cruel curse. Yet, seeing Eva so carefully measured in her steps, he felt an ache that urged him closer despite the dangers. The flame within him flickered with a reckless hope, a desire to protect and to connect. Suddenly, a scream shattered the uneasy peace. A couple nearby had collapsed, skin glowing with an unnatural heat as the telltale signs of combustion spread like wildfire. Panic erupted as the crowd surged away, but Eva was caught in the middle, frozen with shock and fear. Without hesitation, Rowan pushed through the throng, his body a shield as he reached her side.
"Eva, move!"
He urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the relative safety of a narrow alley. The scent of smoke and burning flesh filled the air, mingling with the cries of the afflicted and the frantic shouts of bystanders. His heart hammered in his chest, the matchstick in his pocket a cruel reminder of the flames he both fought and feared. They stumbled into the alley, breath ragged, but the danger was not yet past. Flames licked the edges of the wooden crates stacked high nearby, the heat intense enough to singe skin through fabric. Rowan positioned himself between Eva and the fire, eyes scanning for an escape route. "Stay close," he whispered, voice steady despite the chaos. In that moment, Eva felt something shift within her, a tremor of trust breaking through years of fear. She squeezed his hand, grounding herself in the warmth of his presence. The protective walls she had built began to crumble, brick by brick. The fire brigade arrived moments later, dousing the flames with practiced efficiency, but the damage was done. The city bore fresh scars, and so did Eva's heart, now marked by the undeniable proof of Rowan's devotion. Later, beneath the soft glow of street lamps, they sat on the cold stone steps of an old building, fingers intertwined, the silence between them filled with unspoken promises. Eva's stormy grey eyes searched Rowan's emerald depths, seeking reassurance and finding it reflected back. "I was so afraid," she confessed, voice barely above a whisper. "I know," Rowan said gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "But sometimes courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing to face the fire anyway." A flashback stirred in Rowan's mind, his father, Jonas Wells, a towering figure silhouetted against roaring flames, battling with a fierce determination that had both inspired and haunted him. The memory was bittersweet, a reminder of loss and the legacy he carried. It was this legacy that fueled his resolve to protect those he loved, even at great personal risk. Back in the present, Rowan toyed with a matchstick between his fingers, the flame dancing precariously. It was a small, fragile thing, much like their love, beautiful but dangerous. He knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, but with Eva by his side, he felt emboldened to defy the curse's deadly grip. Mira's cafe became their sanctuary in the following days, a place where laughter and hope mingled with the scent of fresh coffee and baked goods. Detective Elias Thorne's steady presence reminded them of the broader battle being waged not just against the flames, but against despair and fatalism. As Eva slowly dismantled the barriers around her heart, Rowan's patience and warmth nurtured a fragile trust. Each shared moment, each quiet gesture, was a defiant act of love in a city that punished such tenderness with fire. But even as their bond deepened, the flame whispered in the shadows, a constant reminder that their courage must be tempered with care. The dance between desire and survival was delicate, and every step carried the weight of possibility. Yet, in the face of this looming threat, Eva and Rowan found a new strength, a kindling courage that promised, perhaps, that love could endure even in the harshest of fires. Their story was far from over. The city's curse remained, but so did their growing commitment, a slow-burning flame that refused to be extinguished. And as the night stretched on, filled with the soft crackle of embers and whispered hopes, they dared to dream of a future where love might just conquer the fire. "You saved me," Eva murmured, the weight of those words settling between them. "I will always try," Rowan replied, voice steady but full of emotion. "No matter the cost." The city held its breath, watching two fiery hearts blaze against the darkness, kindling a courage that might one day rewrite their fate. The soft clink of porcelain cups and the low murmur of conversation wrapped around Eva and Rowan like a protective blanket as they settled into their favorite booth at Mira's cafe. The air was fragrant with freshly brewed coffee and the scent of cinnamon pastries, a stark contrast to the smoldering tension that usually clung to the city's streets. Tonight, the warmth felt different, not just physical, but something more fragile and precious. Between them lay a worn, ancient manuscript Mira had discovered tucked away in the city's forgotten archives. Its yellowed pages crackled softly as Eva turned them carefully, revealing delicate, looping script and cryptic symbols that hinted at a hope long buried beneath layers of fear and loss. Rowan leaned in, his intense green eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight, brows furrowed in concentration. "It speaks of a ritual," Eva whispered, voice trembling with cautious excitement, "a way to temper the curse, to love slowly, deliberately, with measured devotion. Not to extinguish the flame, but to control it." Rowan's fingers brushed hers, a spark of warmth that belied the icy dread they both carried. "Measured love," he repeated, the words heavy with possibility. "It's what we've been trying to do all along. But now, there might be a way to make it more than just survival." Mira's eyes shone from across the table, her usual fiery optimism tempered by the gravity of the moment. "I've seen what fear does to this city," she said softly. "But I believe in this belief that love can be our rebellion." Their conversation was interrupted by the creak of the cafe door opening. Detective Elias Thorne stepped inside, the weight of his trench coat as heavy as the secrets he carried. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on the trio. He approached, his voice low but urgent. "I've uncovered something," he said, pulling out a folder thick with documents, fragments from old cases, historical accounts that align with this ritual. It's not just legend. There might be a way to fight back against the curse's grip. Eva felt her heart quicken, a mix of hope and apprehension swelling inside her. "But at what cost?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The curse isn't just a story, it's real, it's taken so much already," Thorne nodded solemnly. "True. But knowledge is power. If we understand it, maybe we can change it." Over the following days, Eva and Rowan immersed themselves in the ritual's details, guided by Mira's encouragement and Thorne's insights. They learned it required a practiced patience, a deliberate pacing of affection, and trust, a love measured not by grand gestures but by steady, careful devotion. It was a dance on the razor's edge between passion and restraint, a challenge neither had imagined could be possible. One evening, Under the soft glow of Mira's calf lights, Eva traced the ancient symbols with her finger, feeling the fragile pulse of hope beneath the ink. Rowan watched her with a tenderness that both comforted and terrified her. They shared silent promises, understanding that every heartbeat, every glance, was a step closer to either salvation or ruin. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual unease, but inside that small sanctuary something new was kindling a fragile flame of possibility. Eva and Rowan knew the road ahead would be perilous, that the curse's whisper was never far away. Yet for the first time in a long while, they dared to believe that love, measured and mindful, might just be their fiercest weapon. As they left the cafe that night, the cool air wrapped around them like a shroud, but their steps were lighter, their hearts a little braver. The ritual was more than a legend now, it was their hope, their challenge, and their promise. Together, they would learn to navigate the dangerous devotion that bound them, embracing the bittersweet fate that awaited their fiery hearts. But even as they dared to dream, the flame watched, flickering in the shadows, waiting for the moment their slow, burning love might either conquer or consume them entirely. Eva Hart sat on the edge of the worn velvet armchair nestled in the corner of Mira's cafe. The low hum of quiet conversations and the faint clatter of cups forming a gentle backdrop. The amber light above them dripped warmth like slow honey, casting soft shadows that danced across Rowan's face. His green eyes, vibrant yet tempered by restraint, flickered with an ember-like glow in the dimness. For a moment, the world beyond this small refuge seemed to dim, the curse's ever-looming shadow receding into a distant murmur. She swallowed hard, her fingers twitching beneath the table, yearning to close the distance yet wary of how close was too close. The layers she habitually draped around herself, the thick scarf, the long sleeves, the guarded smiles felt heavier tonight. But here, now with Rowan's steady gaze holding hers, the weight began to lift. Slowly, hesitantly, her hand emerged from beneath the table, trembling just enough to betray her nervousness, and found his. Rowan's fingers curled gently around hers, warmth seeping through the thin fabric of her gloves. "Eva," he whispered, voice low and steady, "we don't have to rush this. We move at our own pace." She nodded, the storm inside her quieting to a gentle breeze. "I want to try," she confessed, voice barely above a breath. "To trust at least a little." Their hands lingered together, a small act that felt monumental in a city where love was a dangerous flame threatening to consume. Outside, the streets whispered of the curse's cruel reach, flickering flames in shadowed alleys, the distant sirens signaling another heartbreak. Yet inside, a fragile hope kindled between them. Later that evening, Rowan sat alone in his modest apartment, the silence thick except for the soft crackle of a candle burning on the windowsill. The photograph before him was worn at the edges. His father, Jonas Wells, smiled with a bravado Rowan had always admired. The man had been a hero, a protector, taken too soon by the curse that haunted their city. Rowan traced the outline of his father's face, memories flooding back the laughter, the warnings, the sudden, devastating loss. He reached for his phone, fingers hovering before typing a message to Eva. The words spilled out slowly, honest and raw, revealing scars he rarely showed. "I never told you about him," he typed, not fully. "But I want you to know." Eva received the message just as she peeled off the layers she wore like armor. Standing before the mirror, she hesitated, eyes searching the reflection for the courage to be vulnerable. She thought of the small vial of ashes she kept, reminders of a love lost to the flames, a life extinguished too soon. Tonight, she would share not just the grief but the hope that still flickered beneath her guarded exterior. Their conversation unfolded in soft confessions and quiet reassurances, each word bridging the gap that fear had carved between them. Rowan's tales of his father's heroism mingled with Eva's memories of laughter and loss, weaving a tapestry of connection more potent than any physical touch. But the city was never far behind. Outside, the night was punctuated by the sinister glow of recent combustion's flashes of orange and red that painted the sky with ominous streaks. The curse whispered its presence in the wind, a chilling reminder that every stolen moment carried risk. Shadows shifted behind curtained windows, as if the flame itself leaned in to listen. Yet as Eva and Rowan sat side by side, their hands entwined and hearts cautiously open, they crossed a threshold. They embraced the fragile ember of their love, daring to let it glow despite the threat of destruction. In that fragile hope, they found the courage to face the unknown together, even as the city held its breath. "We were walking a tightrope," Rowan murmured, eyes locked with hers. "And I'm willing to balance," Eva replied, a soft smile breaking through. As the night deepened, the flame of their connection burned quietly but fiercely, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. They knew the path ahead was fraught with peril, but for now they had crossed the first threshold toward trust, toward love, and toward a future that might yet defy the curse. Outside, the city waited, its streets alive with whispered fears and flickering shadows. But inside Mira's cafe, two souls dared to hope that their ember could endure the storm. The city beneath the smoldering skies was a maze of shadows and flickering neon, a place where every corner whispered warnings and every breath carried the scent of ash. Eva Hart sat beside Rowan Wells on the rooftop of an aging brick building, their legs dangling over the edge, the cool night air curling around them like a fragile promise. Below, the streets glowed faintly, a scattered constellation of lights struggling against the heavy haze that clung to the city's bones. The air was thick not just with pollution, but with the weight of unspoken fears and longing. Eva's stormy grey eyes traced the patterns of light below, her fingers nervously entwining with Rowan's. Despite the careful rituals they had built between them, the closeness was a volatile thing, a dance on the edge of a flame. The flame lurched in the spaces between heartbeats, a whispering presence that neither could ignore. Tonight, it seemed more tangible, more insistent. A sudden breeze stirred, carrying with it a faint, chilling murmur that danced just beyond hearing. Eva's skin prickled as if the very air had turned to smoke. Rowan's grip tightened around her hand, his green eyes flickering like embers in the dark. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, voice low and cautious. Eva nodded, swallowing the tightening knot of dread in her throat. "It's the flame. It's close." They sat in tense silence, the whisper growing into a susurration that seemed to curl around their souls, reminding them of the peril threaded through every stolen moment. Rowan's jaw clenched, his usual warmth replaced by a fierce determination. "We can't let it win." Eva wanted to believe him, to let the fragile hope they were nurturing take root. But the flame's presence was a razor at the edges of her heart, slicing through the careful armor she'd spent years building. Across the city, in a cramped apartment cluttered with the remnants of a life too hurried to be careful, Leela Hart paced restlessly. Her bright eyes blazed with frustration as she faced her sister, the tension between them crackling like static electricity. "Eva, you're suffocating yourself," Leela said sharply, her voice a mix of anger and desperation. "You can't keep pretending that love isn't worth the risk. Living in fear won't save you." Eva's lips pressed into a thin line, her layered clothing feeling heavier than ever. "I'm trying to survive," she replied quietly. "You don't understand what it's like to lose everything." Leela's expression softened for a fraction of a second before the fire returned to her gaze. "I do understand. But I also understand that if you don't take chances, you'll never really live." The argument hung between them, a fragile thread pulling at Eva's resolve. Meanwhile, in a small park edged with wilting flowers and twisted trees, Harper chased after a fluttering butterfly, her laughter a rare and precious sound in the city's oppressive silence. Her innocence was a sharp contrast to the fear that clung to the adults around her, a reminder of all that was at stake. Mira watched from a nearby bench, her brightly colored scarves a defiant splash against the gray. "She's the future," Mira murmured to herself, eyes shining with quiet hope. And we have to fight to give her one. Back on the rain-slicked streets, Eva and Rowan parted ways beneath the flickering glow of a dying street lamp. The night air was thick with unspoken words, and the flames whisper a ghostly reminder of the danger lurking in their hearts. Rowan brushed a damp strand of hair from Eva's face, his touch lingering longer than usual. "We'll find a way," he promised, voice steady but heavy. "No matter what it takes." Eva nodded, the bittersweet tension coiling tight inside her chest. "Together," she whispered. And as they turned away, the flame's voice faded for a moment, leaving behind only the ache of longing and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, love could endure beneath the smoldering skies. But the city held its breath, waiting for the next spark to ignite the darkness. The echo of the flame's whisper lingered, a haunting melody woven into the night, a reminder that every choice carried a cost, and that the path of love was as treacherous as it was beautiful. Eva pulled her coat tighter around her, feeling the weight of the world pressing against her shoulders. Yet beneath it all, a flicker of something fierce and undeniable glowed within her, a dangerous devotion that refused to be snuffed out. Tonight was a test, a moment suspended between fear and hope. And as the city slept beneath the smoldering skies, Eva and Rowan stood at the edge of something vast and uncertain, ready to face whatever came next. The flame might whisper, but they would not be silenced. The city's relentless haze hung low over the streets as evening bled into night, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of loss and longing. In the quiet solitude of her apartment, Evangeline Hart sat curled on the edge of her worn velvet armchair, the soft glow of a single candle flickering against the walls. Her fingers trembled slightly as they held a small glass vial, the fragile container filled with the grayish-white ashes of her first love. It was a token of memory and mourning, a tangible remnant of a past that still haunted her heart. Her stormy gray eyes, usually so guarded and unreadable, shimmered with unshed tears as the memories surged forward. She saw his face warm, smiling, alive, and then the inferno that had claimed him, the cruel curse that had swallowed their future whole. The city's ancient flame, a merciless spectre that punished love with fire, had stolen from her what she held most dear. She swallowed hard, the bitter taste of grief mingling with the faint scent of smoke that lingered in the air. Across the city, Rowan Wells leaned against the cool brick of the fire station, the night air crisp against his sun-kissed skin. His unruly dark hair caught the faint glow of the street lamps, and his intense green eyes, flickering like embers, were fixed on a faded photograph he held carefully in his hands. It was a worn image of his father, a man whose heroism had been etched into the fabric of Rowan's childhood, now a casualty of the very curse that haunted their city. The distant wail of sirens punctuated the stillness, a reminder of the ever-present danger lurking beneath the surface. Rowan's jaw tightened as memories of loss and duty collided. His role as a firefighter was laced with irony and pain, daily battle against literal flames while grappling with the metaphorical blaze of love's destruction. The weight of his family's history pressed heavily on him, fueling a fierce determination to protect others from the same fate. Yet beneath his calm exterior flickered a streak of recklessness, an impulsive desire to defy the curse's cruel grip. Meanwhile, in a cluttered, dimly lit office lined with stacks of yellowed papers and photos, Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over his desk. His sharp features were etched with fatigue and resolve, dark hair streaked with gray falling across his furrowed brow. The soft rustle of turning pages and the scratch of his pen filled the room as he pieced together fragments of reports, ancient documents, and witness accounts. Each new connection deepened the mystery, but also the urgency of his mission. Thorne's eyes widened as he uncovered troubling parallels between past combustions and the curse's origins. The patterns hinted at a cycle far older and more sinister than anyone had dared imagine. His heart ached with the weight of responsibility not only to solve the case, but to shield the city's inhabitants from the consuming flames of fear and sorrow. Back in the sanctuary of Mira Solis's cafe, the soft murmur of voices and the comforting aroma of roasted coffee beans created a fragile bubble of peace against the city's oppressive atmosphere. Eva and Rowan sat across from each other at a small wooden table, their hands hesitating before brushing lightly over a shared cup of steaming tea. The warmth radiated through their fingers, a subtle but powerful connection that spoke of trust slowly building amidst the ever-present danger. Their eyes met, conveying silent promises and mutual understanding. Eva's usual guardedness softened, revealing the tender heart beneath her layers of caution. Rowan's usual wit gave way to quiet sincerity, the embers of his passion tempered by newfound patience. Around them, the safe haven of the cafe seemed to pulse with hopeful energy, a fragile defiance against the city's curse. As the night deepened, flashbacks interwove with the present Eva's family gatherings shadowed by whispered fears, Rowan's childhood marked by loss and reluctant heroism. Their stories, once separate, began to entwine, each revelation a thread binding them closer. Yet the curse lingered, an ever-watchful presence that threatened to consume their fragile hope. Detective Thorne's revelations cast a long shadow over their tentative bond. The knowledge that the curse's roots stretched deep through history heightened the stakes, forcing Eva and Rowan to confront not only their feelings, but the terrifying possibility that love might still mean destruction. But in that shared vulnerability, a spark of courage ignited. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices laden with both fear and yearning. "How do we live with this?" Eva whispered, her hand trembling slightly as it reached for Rowan's. He squeezed gently, a fierce tenderness in his gaze. "By holding on. By choosing each other, even if the flames threatened to burn us." Outside, the city breathed a restless, smoldering entity caught between hope and despair. Inside, two souls dared to dream of a love that might defy the curse, fragile yet fierce, a flicker of light in the consuming dark. The bell above the door jingled softly as Evangeline stepped inside, the familiar warmth of Mira's cafe wrapping around her like a soft blanket against the chill of the smoldering city outside. The rich scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with the subtle sweetness of baked goods, creating a comforting oasis amid the pervasive dread that clung to the streets like smoke. Eva's eyes adjusted to the amber glow of the hanging lamps, each casting gentle pools of light onto the well-worn wooden tables and the mismatched chairs that gave the space a lived-in charm. The low hum of quiet conversations and the faint clatter of cups filled the air, a gentle rhythm that felt like a heartbeat steadying her own. She spotted Rowan almost instantly. He sat alone at a corner table, his posture relaxed but alert, fingers tapping a slow tempo on the rim of his coffee mug. His unruly dark hair fell carelessly across his forehead, and though his green eyes flickered with the ever-present embers of cautious passion, now they softened as they met hers. A tentative smile played at the edges of his lips, fragile but genuine. Eva moved forward, heart thudding in careful cadence, and took the seat opposite him. The space between them was measured, deliberate. Neither rushed to close the gap, mindful of the delicate balance they maintained against the curse that shadowed every moment of connection. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Rowan said quietly, voice low enough to blend with the cafe's warmth. "Neither was I," Eva admitted, her gaze flickering down to the steaming cup before her. "But Mira said this place might be safe. A place to breathe without fear." Mira herself appeared then, weaving through the tables with effortless grace. Her bright red hair caught the light like a flame, and her hazel eyes sparkled with that fierce optimism Eva so desperately needed. She paused beside their table, pressing a reassuring smile into Eva's hand before continuing her rounds. The three of them had become an unlikely trio in this city, where love was both a blessing and a curse, a dangerous dance on the knife's edge of combustion. Rowan leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. I've been thinking about what you said last time, how we need rituals, boundaries. Maybe this is one. A place where we can meet without the world's heat pressing down on us. Eva nodded, grateful for the thoughtfulness behind his words. It's a start. We can't rush. We have to nurture this like tending embers. Too much wind, too much heat, and everything burns. For a while, they simply sat, sharing the quiet companionship that had become their lifeline. The clink of spoons against ceramic, the soft murmur of Mira's laughter as she joked with a regular customer. The faint scratch of a pen on paper from a nearby table, these small sounds stitched a fragile tapestry of normalcy around them. Eva felt the tension within her ease slightly, the weight of fear lifting just enough to let something tender and tentative take root. Rowan's presence was a balm, a reminder that even in a city cursed by fire, warmth could be found. Do you ever wonder, Eva began hesitantly, if this city itself wants us to fail? That maybe the curse isn't just some ancient magic, but a reflection of something deeper, our own fear of connection. Rowan's gaze darkened with thought. Maybe. But I also think it means we have to try harder. To be more careful, yes, but also braver. Because if we don't, then what's the point? She met his eyes, the green and grey swirling together like a storm meeting the calm. In that moment, the cafe around them seemed to hold its breath, a sanctuary not just from the city's flames, but from their own doubts. As the afternoon waned into evening, they shared whispered promises and small smiles, each gesture a carefully measured step towards something neither dared name aloud yet. Mira returned once more before closing time, sliding a small plate of pastries between them. For the journey ahead, she said, her eyes shining with a fierce hope that felt contagious. Eva took a bite, the sweetness lingering on her tongue like a secret shared between friends. Outside, the city's shadows stretched longer, the threat of the curse still lurking, but inside this cafe sanctuary there was light, fragile, flickering, but real. And for the first time in a long while, Eva believed that maybe, just maybe, love could survive the fire. The rain fell steadily, a soft drumming against the city's cracked windows and slick streets, as Evangeline stood on the narrow balcony of her apartment. Her fingers curled around the cold metal railing, knuckles white beneath the layered sleeves of her coat. The city below flickered with the weak glow of street lamps, their light fractured by the wet pavement, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to dance like the very embers she so desperately tried to avoid. Her stormy grey eyes were fixed on the horizon, though her mind was a tempest far more violent. Eva's breath came in shallow bursts, each one a reminder of the fragile walls she'd built around her heart. The weight of loss had etched itself into her every thought, an unrelenting echo of the first love she had lost to the curse of flame that had consumed him, and nearly consumed her trust in love itself. Tonight, that old fear clawed up from the depths of her soul, threatening to unravel the cautious progress she and Rowan had made. She wondered if her restraint was enough, or if it was simply delaying the inevitable heartbreak that seemed written into their fate. Across the city, Rowan paced the cramped back room of Mira's cafe. The scent of freshly ground coffee and warm pastries filling the air but doing nothing to soothe the storm inside him. His fingers toyed restlessly with a matchstick, flicking it absently between his thumb and forefinger. The flame's brief dance in the dim light was a cruel reminder of the danger that hovered over every step he took toward Eva. He clenched his jaw, frustration mounting. Her recent coldness gnawed at him like a fire he couldn't extinguish, and his impulsive nature fought against the slow, measured pace they had promised themselves. "She's shutting me out," Rowan muttered under his breath, his voice rough with emotion. "But if I don't reach her, if I don't push, what's left?" Mira watched him quietly from behind the counter, understanding the turmoil but knowing that patience was the only balm for wounds this deep. "You have to trust the process," she said softly. "Love isn't a blaze, it's embers you tend to, carefully." The words lingered in the air, but Rowan's restlessness only deepened. The curse's shadow was long and cold, and every moment of hesitation felt like a step closer to losing Eva forever. Days passed, tension thickening the air between them like smoke. When they finally met beneath the dim glow of a street lamp in a narrow alley, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken fears. Eva's eyes, usually so guarded, flickered with hurt and uncertainty. Rowan's gaze was fierce, a storm barely contained. "Why are you pulling away?" Rowan's voice was edged with desperation. "I'm risking everything, Eva. Every moment with you feels like walking on fire, but I won't back down." Eva's hands trembled as she tightened her grip on her coat. "Because I'm terrified," she whispered. "Terrified that if I let myself feel too much, I'll lose you like I lost him. I'm trying to protect what little we have left." The space between them crackled with tension, the city's distant hum, a haunting backdrop to their fractured conversation. Words flared, accusations and confessions mingling like sparks in a dry forest. But beneath the anger and fear was a fragile thread of love, stretched thin but unbroken. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of the city, Mira sat across from Detective Elias Thorne in the back of the cafe. Their low conversation a stark contrast to the chaos consuming the young lovers. Elias's sharp eyes reflected a blend of skepticism and hope, his mind racing with the clues the curse had left behind. "If we can understand the curse's origins," Elias mused, "maybe we can find a way to weaken it. But time is running out. The flame isn't just a myth, it's a force that feeds on their fear." Mira nodded, her fiery hair catching the soft light. "Then we have to fight it with something stronger. Hope, connection." Back in the alley, as Eva and Rowan's voices softened, exhaustion and pain etched into their features, a fragile understanding began to take root. The curse might always be there, an ever-present danger, but so was their love, dangerous and beautiful in its imperfection. They would have to learn to navigate the fractures and fears together, or risk losing everything to the flames. The night air was thick with possibility, and as they parted with a tentative promise to try again, the city whispered around them a reminder that love, like fire, could both destroy and illuminate. Yet, as Eva retreated into the shadows, her heart heavy but beating, and Rowan disappeared into the restless streets, a single question lingered in the smoky air. Could love truly survive when every touch risked turning to ash? And somewhere, in the flickering darkness, the flame listened. The room was cloaked in shadows, save for the single candle flickering softly on the wooden table between them. Its flame danced hesitantly, casting trembling light across Eva's delicate features and Rowan's intense green eyes. Neither spoke. Words they both knew were dangerous here. Instead, they communicated in the language they had painstakingly cultivated over months, a language of glances, subtle touches, and silent promises. Evangeline Hart's fingers hovered just above Rowan's, trembling ever so slightly before retreating. She kept her stormy grey eyes locked on his, searching for reassurance in the depths of their shared caution. Her heart pounded in a rhythm too loud for the quiet room, a steady reminder of the peril lurking beneath their fragile connection. Yet, in the stillness, she found a strange comfort, the unspoken vow that whatever risks they faced, they would face them together. Rowan mirrored her restraint, his unruly dark hair falling forward, as he leaned in just enough to let her see the flicker of warmth in his eyes. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that belied the fire simmering beneath his calm exterior. That single, quiet gesture spoke volumes, trust, patience, and a fierce loyalty that no curse could fully extinguish. From the doorway, Mira Solis watched with a hopeful smile. Her bright red hair was a splash of defiant color against the muted tones of the room, her lively hazel eyes reflecting the cautious triumph she saw blooming between the two. She knew the weight of the curse all too well, and had long refused to let the city's fatalistic beliefs dictate the lives of those she loved. Seeing Eva and Rowan recommit to their slow, burning love even in silence was a victory in itself. Outside, the city shadows flickered like restless embers. the ever-present whisper of the flame, an invisible spectre born from ancient tragedy, seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the couple's fragile peace. For a brief moment, the oppressive weight of fear lifted, replaced by a tentative calm woven from hope and restraint. Eva reached into the folds of her layered clothing and carefully produced a small vial, its glass catching the candlelight. Inside lay ashes, the remnants of her first love, consumed by the city's merciless curse. Placing the vial on the table between them, she met Rowan's gaze with a bittersweet reverence. This was more than a relic of loss. It was a symbol of pain transformed into strength, a testament to the endurance of love despite its dangers. Rowan's fingers closed gently over hers, steadying the trembling vial and, by extension, Eva's heart. He understood the significance of the gesture, the silent acknowledgement that their pasts, though scarred by fire, did not have to dictate their future. Together, they could forge a new path, one defined not by fear, but by the courage to love with measured devotion. The silence stretched, filled with the weight of their shared understanding. No promises were spoken aloud, yet in every glance and breath, they reaffirmed their commitment to this delicate dance. Theirs was a love tempered by patience and respect for the curse's deadly edge, a love that dared to bloom even as the flame whispered threats in the dark. As the candle's flame flickered once more, casting elongated shadows that intertwined like their entwined fingers, Eva and Rowan allowed themselves a fleeting smile. It was a quiet victory, a moment of peace carved out of a world set ablaze by fear and loss. But even in this fragile calm, the question lingered in the air. How long could such silence hold back the blaze? How long before the ember of their passion flared too brightly, risking everything they had fought so hard to protect? For now, though, they chose hope. Silent, steadfast, and fiercely guarded, they would face whatever came next together, their vows unspoken but unbreakable. The night air was thick with anticipation as Eva stepped cautiously through the narrow alleyway that led to the hidden courtyard. The usual oppressive silence of the city gave way to a gentle murmur of voices, laughter, and the faint strains of a violin weaving through the darkness. Flickering lights glowed like fireflies, suspended from makeshift riggings, a constellation of hope amid the shadowed buildings, scarred by years of fear. Mira Solis had done it again, against all odds. She had transformed a forgotten space into a sanctuary of light and warmth. The Festival of Embers, a clandestine celebration whispered about in hushed tones, was alive tonight, not just a gathering, but a declaration. Here, love would be honored, not feared, passion acknowledged, not suppressed. Eva's heart pounded in her chest, a steady drumbeat she fought to steady. Her fingers curled tightly around the small vial. She always carried the ashes of her first love, a tangible reminder of what the city's curse could steal. But tonight, the vial felt heavier with a different weight, the possibility of something more, tempered by restraint and courage. She spotted Rowan near the entrance, his tall frame etched in the soft glow of lanterns. His unruly dark hair caught the light, and those intense green eyes flickered with a mix of apprehension and determination. He was leaning against the brick wall, a matchstick twirling absent-mindedly between his fingers, an old habit when nerves stirred beneath his calm exterior. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. This festival was more than a gathering, it was their chance to challenge the curse, not alone but together. As Eva moved closer, Mira's warm voice cut through the hum of conversations, beckoning the crowd to gather in the courtyard's center. The scent of burning sage and cinnamon filled the air, mingling with the crisp night breeze. Families, friends, and strangers alike formed a circle, hands joined, eyes shining with a fragile hope that refused to be extinguished. Mira raised a small wooden box filled with tokens of remembrance, ashes, photographs, letters, symbols of lives lost to the fiery curse. Tonight, she began, we honor those we've loved and lost. We remember their stories, their laughter, their light. And we vow to live, to love, to fight for a future where flame does not mean death. A hush fell. Eva felt the weight of the moment settle around her like a cloak. Beside her, Rowan's hand brushed hers briefly, a spark of warmth that threatened to ignite the caution she had carefully maintained. She drew back slightly but did not pull away. The crowd bowed their heads, and a collective breath was held. Then, one by one, candles were lit, their flames small but resolute. The courtyard transformed into a sea of flickering lights, each a testament to love's resilience. Music swelled, soft and haunting, as couples and friends began to sway gently, careful not to let their emotions surge too high. Eva's eyes searched Rowan's face, finding in it the same delicate balance of longing and restraint. The dance was slow, deliberate, a ritual forged to protect their fragile hearts from the curse's deadly grasp. Mira's laughter rang out suddenly, bright and infectious, pulling Eva from her reverie. Nearby, Harper, Mira's young cousin, twirled with abandon, her unburdened joy a stark contrast to the heavy history wrapped around the others. Watching her, Eva felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time: hope. Rowan stepped closer, his voice a low murmur against the night's backdrop. "You don't have to be afraid here. Not tonight." Eva met his gaze, the stormy grey of her eyes steadying into something softer. "I'm scared," she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. "Me too," he confessed, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "But maybe that's what makes this worth it." Their hands found each other again, this time with intention. The warmth spread slowly, a promise and a risk entwined. Around them, the festival pulsed with life, a fragile rebellion against the curse's suffocating shadow. As the night deepened, the moments between them stretched and shimmered, each touch and glance a careful negotiation between desire and survival. The embers of their love glowed fiercely yet delicately, a beacon in the city's darkness. But even as they embraced this dangerous devotion, the whisper of the flame lingered, an ever-present reminder that passion could both save and destroy. Eva's heart ached with the bittersweet knowledge that this night, like all nights, was a dance on the edge of ruin. When the festival drew to a close, the crowd slowly dispersed, carrying with them the warmth of shared courage. Eva and Rowan lingered, their fingers intertwined, their breaths mingling in the cool air. "We can do this," Rowan said quietly. "Together." Eva nodded, a fragile smile breaking through her guarded exterior. "Together." And beneath the watchful stars, amidst the glowing embers and whispered promises, their slow-burning love found its fiercest flame, yet one tempered by hope, courage, and the quiet defiance of a city unwilling to let love die. But as the last lanterns flickered into darkness, a distant crackle reminded them the flame was never far, and the true test was yet to come. The night air hung heavy with the scent of extinguished fires and smoldering ash, a constant reminder of the city's curse that neither Eva nor Rowan could escape. Yet beneath the flickering street lamp on that quiet, cobblestone corner, a fragile warmth began to pulse between them, defying the cold grip of fear that had long held them apart. Eva's hands were unsteady as she reached out, her fingers brushing a stray lock of Rowan's unruly dark hair from his forehead. The simple gesture felt monumental, a small rebellion against the walls she had built around her heart. Her stormy grey eyes searched his intense green ones, flickering like embers themselves, seeking some sign of encouragement. "Rowan," she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute, "I don't want to keep hiding. I'm tired of measuring every look, every word. I want to really try with you." Rowan's smile was slow to form, but when it did, it was like a gentle flame warming the winter chill. He reached out, taking her hand in his with a patience that steadied her trembling spirit. "Eva, I'm here. No rush, no pressure. Just us, step by step." Their connection deepened in that quiet moment, a promise unspoken, but understood, a delicate dance of trust that could either save or consume them. Later that evening, inside the comforting sanctuary of Mira's cafe, the soft glow of amber lights wrapped around the wooden tables and the scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint notes of jazz. Mira's bright red hair caught the light as she watched Eva and Rowan from across the room, a hopeful smile tugging at her lips. Eva and Rowan sat close, their conversation a gentle murmur amid the cafe's cozy hum. Eva's laughter, rare and bright, floated across the room, mingling with Rowan's quiet chuckles. Here, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the safe haven Mira provided, the oppressive shadow of the curse seemed to recede, if only for a moment. But the city outside remained restless. As they left the cafe, a sudden gust of wind swept through the narrow alleyways, carrying with it the whispered presence of the flame the curse personified as a flickering shadow in the darkness. The air thickened, and the familiar tension returned, prickling their skin and tightening their breaths. Rowan's hand found Eva's, gripping it firmly as if to shield her from the unseen threat. "Whatever comes," he murmured, "we face it together." Eva nodded, drawing strength from his steady presence. Their slow-burning romance was no longer just a fragile hope but a courageous defiance against a fate written in fire. Meanwhile, Detective Elias Thorne stood outside a recently scorched building, the acrid smell of smoke lingering in the air. His sharp eyes scanned the charred remains, the weight of his latest discoveries pressing heavily on his shoulders. The investigation into the curse's resurgence had revealed unsettling patterns, intensifying the urgency of their plight. Yet even in the grim shadows, a faint spark of optimism shone in his gaze. The pieces were starting to come together, fragments of truth that might one day unravel the curse's hold on the city. Back in the quiet of their shared moments, Eva and Rowan's breakthrough marked a turning point. Eva had dared to voice the feelings she had long kept buried, and Rowan's patient response offered a foundation of trust strong enough to begin dismantling the barriers between them. But with every step closer, the flame stirred more restlessly, its whispered warnings growing louder in the winds through the alleys and the flicker of shadows behind closed doors. Could their love survive the danger that loomed, or would their fiery hearts be consumed in the process? The answer would come only with time, and with the courage to keep breaking boundaries, even when the stakes were higher than ever before. As they walked into the uncertain night, hands entwined and hearts cautiously open, the city held its breath. The slow-burning romance of Eva and Rowan was no longer just a whispered hope, it was a beacon lighting the way through the smoldering darkness, fragile yet fiercely alive. And somewhere deep within the city's restless flame, the ancient curse waited, waiting to test the strength of their dangerous devotion. The night was far from over, and the fire that bound them was only just beginning to blaze. Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over his desk in the dim light of his cramped office, the clutter of papers and old books surrounding him like silent witnesses to years of unanswered questions. The city outside hummed faintly, muffled by the thick fog rolling in from the river, but inside the room, only the soft rustling of fragile parchment broke the silence. Thorne's fingers trembled slightly as he turned another yellowed page, his sharp eyes scanning the faded ink for clues that might finally explain the fairy curse that had haunted the city and those he had come to care for since long before anyone alive could remember. The manuscript was fragile, its edges crumbling under the weight of time, but its contents were revelatory. Thorne read aloud softly, as if the words themselves might ignite the shadows lurking in the corners of his office. The text recounted a tragedy centuries old, a love story twisted by betrayal and fire, culminating in a curse born from heartbreak and vengeance. The flame, as it was called, was no mere force of destruction, but a manifestation of fear, loss, and the consequences of passion left unchecked. As Thorne absorbed the details, his mind wandered to Eva and Rowan, the cautious lovers who struggled daily to navigate the perilous balance between desire and survival. Their stories, too, were woven into the fabric of the city's tortured history. Thorne's heart ached with the weight of their silent battles, the stolen glances, the quiet retreats, and the fiery moments they fought desperately to contain. Later that evening, Thorn met with Eva and Rowan in the muted warmth of Mira's cafe, a sanctuary amid the city's smouldering despair. The soft clatter of cups and low murmur of conversations created a cocoon of normalcy, a fragile bubble where hope could linger. Thorn spread the ancient documents across the small wooden table, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows over the faded script. Eva's stormy grey eyes traced the words with a mixture of reverence and sorrow. Her fingers twitched nervously, clutching the small vial of ashes she always kept hidden. Rowan reached across, his hand hovering just above hers, the ember green of his eyes reflecting the candle's flame. Neither spoke, their emotions tangled in the unspoken fear that every revelation brought them closer to a truth that might either save or consume them. Mira, vibrant as ever, leaned in, her bright red hair catching the light like a flare of defiance. "We can't let this curse control us," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tremor of danger that lingered in the air. "If there's a way to understand it, to fight it, then we have to try." The weight of the past pressed heavily on the trio, but beneath it lay a fragile thread of hope. Thorn's discoveries hinted at rituals and forgotten wisdom that might temper the curse's deadly flames, offering a glimmer of a future where love could survive not just in whispers and shadows, but in fiery, defiant light. Outside, the rain pattered softly against the windows, the streets slick and shimmering under the flickering street lamps. Shadows danced and flickered like whispered flames, echoing the flames' haunting presence that had long haunted the city's heart. Yet inside the cafe, amidst the murmurs of ancient tales and quiet courage, Eva and Rowan found themselves standing at a crossroads poised between the weight of history and the fragile possibility of rewriting their fate. Evangeline Hart sat across from Rowan Wells in the cozy sanctuary of Mira's cafe, the soft murmur of other patrons weaving a gentle backdrop to their tentative conversation. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee, beans, and warm pastries, a comforting contrast to the cold, smoldering streets outside. Eva's fingers curled over Rowan's hand, careful, measured pressure, a silent testament to the trust they were slowly building. Her stormy grey eyes searched his intense green ones, flickering with emotions she both longed to surrender to and feared would consume her. "I never thought we'd get this far," Rowan whispered, his voice low enough to blend with the cafe's quiet hum. "Just sitting here holding hands without the world burning around us." Eva smiled, a fragile curve that still carried the weight of caution. "It feels like walking on one wrong move and everything could ignite. But maybe, if we be careful enough, we can control the flame." Rowan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Control is everything. That's why I've been practicing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single matchstick, the tiny wooden stick a symbol of so much more. With a flick of his thumb, he struck it, a small flame blossoming briefly before he blew it out carefully, the smoke curling like a whispered promise. Eva's breath caught. The image was potent danger and beauty held in a fragile balance. "You becoming a master of restraint," she teased softly, the tension in her chest easing for a moment. Their ritual was simple yet profound. Each small gesture, a touch, a glance, a whispered word was measured and intentional, designed to stoke the embers of their connection without sparking destruction. Over weeks they had learned to read each other's limits, to communicate without words, and to honor the silent boundaries that kept them safe. Outside the cafe, the city bore the scars of the curse like a living wound. Somewhere, flames flickered in the night, the whispered threat of combustion a constant shadow. But here, within these walls, Eva and Rowan nurtured a fragile flame of their own, one tempered by patience and trust. One afternoon, beneath the gentle warmth of a sunlit park, Eva sat on a bench, a small notebook open on her lap. She carefully wrote notes, simple phrases of affection, hope, and reassurance, folding each into tiny envelopes. When Rowan arrived, his eyes brightened at the sight. He accepted the notes with reverence, their exchange a quiet ritual that spoke volumes. "It's like planting seeds," Eva said, watching a breeze stir the leaves above them. Each note a promise that we'll survive this, that we're worth the risk. Rowan smiled, folding the last note into his pocket. We were growing something stronger, something that can withstand the fire. Yet beneath their hopeful moments, the curse's relentless pressure never waned. Detective Elias Thorne, a figure shadowed by his own losses, continued his tireless investigation. Late one night, in the dim glow of his office lamp, he sat with Mira Solis, sharing the latest findings. "The curse isn't just a random force," Elias said, his voice grave, but edged with a spark of hope. "There's a pattern, a way it responds to emotional intensity. If we can understand the triggers, maybe we can find a way to weaken it." Mira nodded, her fiery hair catching the lamplight. "That would change everything. For people like Eva and Rowan, it could mean a chance to love without fear." Back in the cafe, Eva and Rowan's cautious love blossomed against the backdrop of whispered fears and flickering shadows. Every touch was a battle, every smile a victory. They were learning that love, in their cursed city, was a paradox, both a source of life and a threat of death. The city had never seemed so fragile. The air itself felt thick, as though every breath might spark a flame. Eva Hart stood at the edge of the bustling city square, the setting sun casting long shadows across cracked pavement and worn cobblestones. Around her, the usual hum of life was fractured. People moved with hurried steps, their faces pale, eyes darting nervously to one another. The curse, the ancient flame that devoured those who dared to love too deeply, was no longer a distant threat whispered about in hushed tones. It was here, palpable and relentless. Eva's heart beat unevenly beneath the layers of her clothing, each thump a reminder of the careful balance she and Rowan had fought so hard to maintain. She pulled her coat tighter around her slender frame, her grey eyes scanning the crowd. Nearby, Rowan stood with his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his green eyes dark and unreadable beneath the furrow of his brow. His usual warmth was tempered by an edge of tension, a quiet storm that mirrored her own unease. Suddenly, a piercing cry shattered the uneasy calm. Eva turned sharply, heart leaping as she spotted the source. A couple, caught in an embrace too fierce, too sudden, ignited in a blaze of searing light. Flames licked at the air, twisting and curling like living things, consuming flesh and fabric alike. The crowd recoiled in horror, screams rising like the fire itself. Smoke curled upward, a dark serpent against the twilight sky. Rowan was at her side in an instant, his hand closing over hers with a grip that was both grounding and desperate. "Stay close," he murmured, voice low but firm. His eyes flicked to the burning remains, searching for answers, for a way to stop the devastation. Eva nodded, swallowing the lump of fear lodged in her throat. The outbreak was spreading. Within minutes, reports flooded in another couple, another sudden combustion, each one a brutal reminder of the curse's merciless grip. The city's fragile veneer of control shattered under the weight of panic. They retreated to Mira's cafe, a small haven nestled among smoldering streets and shuttered shops. The scent of fresh coffee and baked bread was a balm, but even here, safety felt tenuous. The warm amber light cast soft glows on the walls, but Eva and Rowan sat apart at a corner table, the space between them charged with unspoken fears. Mira bustled around the cafe, her bright red hair a beacon of defiant hope against the gathering gloom. "We can't let this break us," she said, her voice resolute as she refilled their cups. "The city needs us to be strong." But the weight of the combustions pressed heavily on Eva's chest. Her fingers trembled as she absently traced the rim of her cup. "What if we're only delaying the inevitable?" she whispered. "What if every moment we share is just feeding the flame?" Rowan's gaze softened, but the shadows in his eyes deepened. "Then we fight it," he said quietly. "Together." Outside, the night deepened, cloaking the city in a velvet darkness broken only by flickers of distant fires. Detective Elias Thorne stood at the scene of yet another combustion, his trench coat flapping in the biting wind. His sharp eyes scanned the wreckage, frustration etched into every line of his face. Despite the horrors, his resolve was unwavering. Each new case brought him closer to the curse's origin and perhaps a way to weaken it. Back at the cafe, Eva and Rowan's tentative conversation spiraled into a torrent of anxieties and hopes. Their hands brushed, a fleeting contact that sent a jolt through them both. Fear warred with longing. Restraint battled desire. The curse was no longer an abstract threat, but a living specter looming over every shared glance, every whispered promise. Later, as rain began to fall, cold and steady, they walked through slick streets, the city's lights refracted in puddles like shattered embers. Their fingers intertwined hesitantly, the chill of the droplets mingling with the warmth of their touch. In the silence, they spoke of fears long buried and hopes barely dared to be voiced. "We were fraying," Eva admitted, voice barely above a breath. "Like the edges of a flame, flickering and fragile." Rowan nodded, squeezing her hand. But even a flicker can ignite something new. The curse was relentless, but so was their determination. As the city trembled beneath the weight of its own history and pain, Eva and Rowan stood at the precipice not just of destruction, but of a love that dared to burn, slow and steady against all odds. And as the rain washed over them, the faintest hint of dawn touched the horizon, a bittersweet promise that even amidst ashes, hope might yet take flame. The silence between them stretched, taut and shimmering with possibility. The question lingered in the air, unspoken but impossible to ignore. How much could their love endure before it too was consumed? The city held its breath, waiting for the answer. The heavy silence inside Mira's cafe was punctuated only by the soft clink of china and the occasional murmur of conversation. Outside, the city still bore the scars of the recent outbreak, streets marked with ash, windows darkened in mourning, and an unshakable sense of dread hanging in the air like smoke. Yet here, within these four walls, a fragile sanctuary persisted. Evangeline Hart sat opposite Rowan Wells at a small corner table, their hands resting near each other but not quite touching. The glow from the amber lamps overhead softened her stormy grey eyes, which carried a wariness deeper than the physical. Rowan's green eyes, normally so lively and flickering with quiet fire, were tempered now by the weight of recent losses. "We survived," Rowan said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was husky from disuse, as if the words themselves were a victory. "That's something, isn't it?" Eva nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "It has to be." Mira Solis bustled over with a fresh pot of tea, her bright red hair catching the light as she moved with determined energy. Her lively hazel eyes scanned the room, taking in the small group gathered to share warmth and hope despite the city's grief. "We have to hold on to this," she said, pouring tea into their cups. "Because if we don't, the flame wins." Rowan flashed her a grateful smile. "You always know how to make a place feel like a refuge." Mira shrugged, a playful glint in her eyes. "Somebody has to. This city can't swallow us whole. Not all of us." The cafe had become more than just a business, it was a beacon for those who refused to give in to despair. Survivors, skeptics, and believers alike gathered here, sharing stories, laughter, and fragile plans for the future. Mira's rebellious spirit sparked something in the community, a flicker of resistance against the all-consuming fear. Meanwhile, in a quieter part of the city, Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over his desk, the harsh glow of a single lamp illuminating a chaotic sprawl of case files, newspaper clippings, and faded photographs. The man's sharp features were shadowed by exhaustion, his dark hair streaked with grey strands that seemed to multiply with every sleepless night. His fingers traced the edges of a brittle page, his mind piecing together patterns that others might miss. The recent combustions had rattled the city, and the curse personified as the flame loomed larger than ever. But Elias's investigation was uncovering cracks in the ancient mystery, hints that the curse might be challenged, even weakened. A soft knock pulled him from his reverie. Mira entered, her presence a contrast to the sterile office. "You were working too hard," she said gently, placing a cup of coffee on his desk. He offered a tired smile. I have to. People are counting on me and Eva and Rowan. She asked, her voice lowering, have they found any peace? Elias's gaze softened. They were holding on. That's something, given everything. Back at the cafe, Eva and Rowan leaned closer, voices barely above a whisper. The city's curse had taken so much from them loved ones, safety, and the simple joy of connection. Yet here they were, fragile and bruised but still reaching for each other. I'm scared, Eva admitted, her fingers tightening around the cup. Of losing you. Of losing myself in this. Rowan reached out, his hand hovering just above hers, a silent promise of protection. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be brave enough to keep trying. Their whispered vows were a small rebellion, a quiet defiance against the flame that threatened to consume them. The city outside might still be shrouded in shadow, but within them, a new kind of fire was kindling, one born of hope, sacrifice, and the courage to love despite the odds. As dawn broke, the two stood side by side on a rooftop overlooking the smoldering skyline. The first light caught the distant flicker of flames, mingling with the golden hues of morning. It was a reminder of the dangers they faced, but also of the promise that after every night, there was a dawn. Eva inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs with a bittersweet mix of fear and hope. We don't know what comes next, she said softly. But we face it together, Rowan replied, squeezing her hand gently. And in that moment, beneath the rising sun and the whispering city, they chose to carry the weight of their love ashes and hope intertwined forward into whatever future awaited them. The flame still flickered at the edges of their world, but now it was met with something just as fierce, a love that dared to burn bright, even in the face of destruction. With their hearts alight and their spirits intertwined, Eva and Rowan stepped into the uncertain day, ready to write the next chapter of their story, one tempered by pain, strengthened by hope, and fearless in its fragile beauty. And as the city stirred from its restless night, a single question lingered in the air: could love truly be the spark that saves them all? The air in Mira's cafe was thick with a quiet energy that bordered on reverence. Soft amber lights cast a warm glow over the small gathering, their flickering flames mirroring the nervous excitement coursing through Eva's veins. She sat at the corner table, the ancient leather-bound book open before her, its pages fragile yet filled with the promise of a fragile hope. Rowan sat close beside her, their shoulders nearly touching, their hands occasionally brushing in a tentative, electric dance of restraint. This is it, Rowan murmured, his voice low and steady, a contrast to the rapid beating of Eva's heart. The ritual, the one that might finally give us a chance. Eva nodded, her stormy grey eyes scanning the delicate script. The ritual demanded a precise balance, an expression of love measured by patience and tempered by conscious restraint. It was as if the flame that had haunted their city for generations could be soothed by the careful tending of two souls willing to burn without consuming. Mira bustled around them, her bright red hair a vivid streak in the soft light. "Everyone's here," she whispered, glancing toward the cafe entrance where a few familiar faces, cautious but hopeful, trickled in. "They want to believe." Detective Elias Thorne entered quietly, his trench coat brushing the worn floorboards. His dark eyes, shadowed by exhaustion and determination, met Eva's. "I've gathered everything I could find," he said, placing a worn folder on the table. "The curse's origins run deeper than anyone realized. This ritual, if it's truly ancient, might be our best lead yet." Eva reached out, fingers trembling slightly to touch the folder. Inside were faded maps, fragmented records, and cryptic notes linking the curse to a forgotten tragedy that had seeded the city's collective pain. "We were standing at the edge of something," she said softly, but the risk. Rowan took her hand firmly in his. "We've lived with risk every day. This time we choose how to face it, together." Later, beneath the twilight sky, the city's smoldering streets gave way to the secluded sanctuary of a small park. There Eva and Rowan prepared the ritual's altar, a simple circle of stones, a bowl of purified water, and a single candle whose flame flickered like a fragile heartbeat against the evening breeze. Eva inhaled deeply, the scent of burning sage swirling around them, grounding her amidst the rushing tide of fear and hope. She met Rowan's intense green eyes, seeing in them the same mix of determination and vulnerability. "Are you ready?" she asked. He nodded, his fingers lightly tracing the candle's base. For the first time. Together, they began the ritual, each word spoken with deliberate care, each gesture a promise to love measured and true. Their hearts beat in unison, the silence between them charged with the weight of everything they dared to hope for. Back at Mira's cafe, the community gathered in hushed anticipation. The ritual was more than a private act. It was a beacon of rebellion against the curse that had stolen so many lives and loves. Faces lit by candlelight reflected a shared yearning for a future unbound by fear. As the final words of the ritual echoed into the night, a palpable stillness settled over the city. The flame, the ever-present whisper of the curse, seemed to pause, its fierce hunger momentarily tempered by the courage of two souls who chose to love not recklessly, but carefully. Yet the path ahead remained uncertain. Eva and Rowan knew the ritual was only the beginning, a delicate edge between destruction and salvation. As they stood hand in hand beneath the stars, the city held its breath, waiting to see if measured love could truly rewrite a destiny written in fire. "Whatever happens," Rowan said, voice steady but soft, "we face it together." Eva squeezed his hand, a fragile smile breaking through her guarded exterior. "Together," she echoed, the words a whispered vow that promised both hope and defiance. The night held its secrets close, but in that moment, beneath the smoldering sky, two hearts dared to burn bright, careful, relentless, and unyielding. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond the flickering lights, the flame watched, waiting for its next move. The room was steeped in an uneasy stillness, lit only by the flickering glow of embers arranged in a meticulous circle at the center of the wooden floor. The scent of burning sage mingled with the faint musk of old parchment, a subtle reminder of the city's ancient history and the curse that clung to its every shadow. Eva sat across from Rowan, their hands hovering just above the warm coals, neither daring to close the distance completely, yet unwilling to retreat. Their eyes met, a silent exchange that carried the weight of years spent guarding hearts that threatened to ignite and consume. The ritual they were about to undertake was whispered about in folklore, a delicate dance of measured love that promised to temper the deadly flames that plagued their city. Yet, as the flame's presence whispered through the room a sinister murmur of heat and warning, they both understood this was more than a test of patience. It was a battle for their very souls. Eva's chestnut hair caught the ember light, casting a halo that seemed almost too fragile for the strength she summoned within. Her stormy gray eyes searched Rowan's face for any sign of hesitation, but all she found was the quiet courage that had drawn her to him despite the dangers. Rowan's green eyes flickered like the embers between them, alive with the reckless hope that had slowly chipped away at her defenses. Mira lingered just beyond the threshold, her bright scarves a splash of defiance against the muted tones of the room. Her smile was steady but tinged with concern, a reflection of the city's fragile hope resting on this moment. Nearby, Detective Elias Thorne flipped through the brittle pages of ancient manuscripts, his voice a low murmur as he pieced together fragments of the curse's origin, seeking a way to shatter its hold. The ritual began with a shared breath, slow and deliberate. Their hands moved in unison, drawing invisible lines of trust and restraint as they recited vows learned from forgotten tongues. Each word was a promise, a pledge to love not with abandon but with caution, to nurture a flame that could warm without burning. The air thrummed with energy, thickening as the flame's whisper swirled around them, a seductive yet threatening presence that tested every fiber of their will. Eva's heart pounded fiercely, every beat a defiance against the fear that had ruled her life. Rowan's fingers twitched with the urge to close the gap, to pull her into a blaze of reckless abandon, but he held back, anchoring them both with his steady patience. The ritual was more than magic. It was a testament to their growth, their ability to balance desire and survival in a city that demanded sacrifice. Outside, the city's skyline glimmered under a tapestry of stars, distant flames flickering like ghosts in the night. Those fires were reminders of lives lost to passion's deadly edge, but within this room, Eva and Rowan forged a new path, one where love could exist without destruction. Yet, the flames' whisper grew louder, a haunting melody threading through their whispered vows, threatening to unravel the fragile threads they wove. The tension was palpable as they reached the ritual's crescendo, eyes locked in a fierce communion that transcended words. Time seemed to slow, the space between heartbeats stretched thin as the flame hovered on the brink of eruption. In that moment, vulnerability and strength intertwined. Their love was a blaze both beautiful and terrifying. When the final word fell from their lips, a hush settled over the room. The embers glowed steady, no sudden flare, no consuming blaze. They had survived the ritual's trial, but the danger was far from over. The flame's presence lingered watchful, waiting. Eva exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Rowan reached out, his hand finally bridging the gap to rest gently over hers. The warmth was real, a tangible proof that their love could burn without destroying them. As Mira stepped forward with a relieved smile, and Detective Thorne closed his book with a thoughtful nod, the four shared a moment of fragile hope. They knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but tonight, the city's curse had met its match in measured love. Outside, the winds whispered through the smoldering streets, carrying with them the promise of change. Eva and Rowan's fire burned bright, a beacon against the darkness, a testament to the courage it took to love in a world where every heartbeat was a risk. The air between them thickened, charged with an energy neither Eva nor Rowan could fully contain. They had danced around this moment for months, careful as a pair of tightrope walkers suspended above an abyss that threatened to swallow them whole if they faltered. But tonight the tension unraveled, a slow burn flaring into a blaze that neither could resist nor fully control. Eva's stormy grey eyes met Rowan's intense green ones, both pools of restrained desire and unspoken fear. The room around them, dimly lit by the muted glow of city lights filtering through rain-speckled windows, seemed to pulse with their shared heartbeat. She could feel the heat of his presence, like a living flame licking at her skin. A dangerous warmth she both craved and dreaded. "Eva," Rowan whispered, his voice low, roughened by months of pent-up longing. "We don't have to do this, we can step back." But the words, instead of cooling the fire, only fanned the sparks into a roaring inferno. She shook her head, breath hitching. "No," she said, voice trembling. "I'm tired of stepping back. I'm tired of living in fear." With a tentative, desperate tenderness, Rowan reached out, brushing a stray lock of dark chestnut hair from her face. His fingers were warm, grounding, a balm against the icy dread that tightened her chest. Their hands met, fingers intertwining, cautious at first, then with increasing certainty, the space between them vanished. Their lips met, soft and hesitant at first, then with fierce urgency. The kiss was a collision of years of longing, pain and hope, a defiant act against the city's cruel curse that threatened to consume them. The room seemed to shrink around them, shadows flickering on the walls like flames dancing to an unseen rhythm. Suddenly, a searing heat erupted within Eva's chest, a wildfire breaking free from its cage. She gasped, breaking the kiss, her body trembling uncontrollably. The air shimmered, and for a fleeting moment, the faint smell of smoke and ash filled the room. Rowan caught her before she could fall, his arms steadying her shaking frame. "Eva, stay with me," he urged, voice fierce but gentle. "I'm here." Her breath hitched as the burning sensation pulsed through her veins, threatening to ignite the deadly combustion that had stolen so much from them both. Panic clawed at her throat, but Rowan's steady presence anchored her. Slowly the heat ebbed, leaving a dull ache in its wake. They sat in silence, the distant wail of sirens blending with the crackling whispers of the flame, an ever-present spectre lurking at the edges of their fragile peace. The city outside remained oblivious to the intimate battle unfolding within this small sanctuary. "This changes everything," Eva finally whispered, voice barely audible. Rowan nodded, his jaw clenched in determination. "But it doesn't end us, not if we decide it won't." Her fingers found his again, their touch deliberate, a silent vow forged in the crucible of their shared ordeal. They were no longer two cautious souls skirting the edges of love's fire. Tonight they chose to burn bright, fierce, and unafraid. As the night deepened, their hearts beat in unison, a rhythm marked by the bittersweet tension of dangerous devotion. The curse still whispered. But Eva and Rowan had found a voice of their own, a defiant hymn of hope and courage that would echo through the smoldering streets long after the embers faded. And though the path ahead remained shadowed by uncertainty, one truth blazed clear: love, in all its peril and beauty, was worth the risk. The city held its breath, watching, waiting. But Eva and Rowan were no longer afraid to face the flames. The morning light seeped softly through the stained glass of Mira's cafe, casting fractured rainbows over the worn wooden table where Eva sat alone. The city outside was draped in ash-gray hues, a somber reminder of the curse that clung to every heartbeat here. She cradled her coffee cup, feeling its warmth seep into her chilled fingers, a small comfort in a world that had taught her to fear the heat of connection. Her thoughts drifted back to the night before, the moment that had nearly undone them both. The surge of passion, reckless and consuming, had threatened to ignite the deadly flame that haunted their city. But somehow, by sheer will and trembling restraint, they had pulled back from the precipice. Now, in the fragile quiet that followed, Eva wrestled with the weight of their choice. The bell above the cafe door tinkled softly, drawing her attention. Rowan stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the soft morning light. He wore the usual casual defiance, a leather jacket thrown over a simple shirt, his unruly dark hair tousled as if caught by the wind itself. His green eyes, flickering like embers, searched for her with a mixture of hope and caution. He slid into the seat across from her with a quiet smile, the space between them charged yet tender. "Morning," he said, voice low, carrying the remnants of last night's tension. "Morning," Eva replied, her stormy grey eyes meeting his. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure I'd make it through the night without thinking about you," he confessed, the honesty in his tone unraveling some of the walls she had built around her heart. They spoke in measured words, each syllable weighed with care. The city around them hummed with life, the distant echoes of footsteps and muted conversations, weaving a tapestry of normalcy that felt almost alien to their fragile reality. Later, Rowan found himself beneath the skeletal branches of a leafless tree in the park, the fading light of dusk pooling around him. Before him, a small bonfire sputtered, its embers glowing faintly before surrendering to the night. The crackling whispers of the dying flame mirrored the turmoil within him, a tension between the desire to burn brightly and the need to survive the cold dark. He waited, heart thrumming with a quiet resolve for Eva to arrive. When she finally appeared, her presence calmed the restless flicker inside him. They stood side by side, the silence between them speaking volumes. "We still hear," Eva murmured, her voice barely above the rustling leaves. "And we'll keep being here," Rowan replied, reaching out to gently take her hand. The touch was electric yet careful, a promise held in the fragile warmth of their fingers. Back in Eva's apartment, the dim glow of candlelight painted soft shadows on the walls. They sat close, their bodies aching for connection but restrained by the unspoken fear that love here was a dangerous fire. Their hands brushed, sending sparks of warmth that both thrilled and terrified them. "I don't want to lose you," Eva whispered, her voice trembling like a fragile flame. "You won't," Rowan vowed, eyes shining with fierce determination. "Not if we keep holding on, even when it's hard." Their moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Detective Elias Thorne entered, his trench coat heavy with the weight of the city's despair. His eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, held new information that could shift the tide of their fight against the curse. He laid out his findings, fragments of ancient lore, patterns in the combustions, and a glimmer of hope that the deadly flame might be weakened. The room pulsed with urgency, the candlelight flickering as if echoing the fragile hope growing in their hearts. "This isn't over," Elias said grimly. "But there's more to fight for than just survival now." Eva and Rowan exchanged a look, one of shared strength and fragile hope. They were no longer just survivors of a deadly curse. They were partners in a dangerous dance of love and defiance. As dawn crept over the city, painting the sky with hues of soft golden rose, Eva felt a quiet shift within her. The ashes of fear were still there, but beneath them, embers of hope burned steady and bright. Together, they would navigate the perilous path ahead, between ashes and embers, love's flame flickering defiantly against the darkness. "Whatever comes next," Rowan whispered, "we face it together." "Together," Eva affirmed, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. And in that fragile promise, the city's curse felt just a little less inevitable. Yet, as the first light touched the smoldering streets, the question lingered: how long could their fragile flame endure before the inevitable blaze consumed them both? The answer awaited in the shadows, where the flame still whispered, patient and relentless. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the city still felt drenched in a heavy silence, as if the very air held its breath under the weight of impending dread. Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over a cluttered desk in the archives beneath the police station. The dim light of a single desk lamp casting long shadows across the scattered papers and yellowed books. His fingers trembled slightly as he turned a fragile page, careful not to tear the brittle parchment. The scent of damp ink and ancient leather filled the cramped space, a scent he had come to associate with both hope and despair. For weeks, Elias had been chasing fragments of the city's cursed past, tracing the origins of the flame that haunted every heartbeat here. The combustions, the tragedies, the whispers of a curse older than memory all led him deep into forgotten histories no one dared revisit. Tonight, something felt different. His eyes caught a faded manuscript, its margins scrawled with symbols and a language that had taken him years to decipher. A ritual, a chance to weaken the curse. His breath caught. The words described a delicate balance of measured love, a dance of restraint and devotion that could soothe the flame's hunger. Yet the ritual was perilous, its success uncertain. He knew the stakes, the lives already lost, the flames licking at the edges of hope. Packed away carefully, the manuscript was a beacon in the dark. The following evening, the warmth of Mira's cafe was a stark contrast to the chill that clung to the city streets. The soft glow of hanging lanterns bathed the worn wooden tables, and the rich aroma of coffee mingled with the faint scent of cinnamon. Mira herself was a whirlwind of color and energy, her red hair a fiery banner against the muted walls. She moved behind the counter with practiced ease, stealing glances at the small group gathered near the window. Eva sat across from Rowan and Elias, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her chipped ceramic cup. Her stormy grey eyes were shadowed with doubt, the ghosts of past losses flickering behind them. Rowan's gaze was steady, his intense green eyes flickering like embers as he listened intently to Elias's cautious explanation. "The manuscript suggests a path," Elias said quietly, voice low but steady. "A ritual that might temper the flame, but it requires something rare, measured love, patience, trust. It's not a cure, but it could give us a fighting chance." Mira smiled, a hopeful light in the dim cafe. "Then we have to try, for all of us." Despite the weight of fear pressing down on them, a fragile hope began to take root. Outside, the city was restless. The usual hum of life was subdued, replaced by whispered rumors and wary glances. Street lamps flickered uncertainly, casting long shadows over slick pavements stained with the memories of smoke and ash. The scent of faint smoke still lingered, a reminder that the flame's hold was far from broken. Couples moved cautiously, eyes darting nervously, afraid to let their hearts ignite. The curse was no longer an invisible threat, it was a living shadow creeping across every corner, feeding on fear and loss. Back on her apartment balcony, Eva wrapped her arms around herself, the cool night breeze tugging at the layers of her clothing. The city sprawled before her, a maze of flickering lights and silent streets, the weight of its curse pressing heavily on her chest. In her hand, she held a small vial ashes from her first love, a painful talisman of what had been lost. Her breath fogged in the cold air as she whispered, "Maybe this time it will be different. Maybe we can fight the flame, not just survive it." The vial glimmered faintly in the moonlight, a fragile ember of memory and hope. But the flame was watching, always watching. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, the city stirred, its people, caught between despair and hope, braced for what the day would bring. The curse remained, a dark pulse beneath their hearts, but a new resolve kindled in the eyes of those who dared to dream of a future unburned. The ritual was no longer just a legend, it was their last chance. And the flame's shadow loomed larger than ever. "We have to be ready," Rowan said quietly, joining Eva on the balcony. His hand found hers, warm and steady, "For whatever comes next." Eva nodded, her heart aching with the bittersweet ache of love and fear. Together, they stood at the edge of the unknown, the city holding its breath, waiting to see if love could truly defy the fire. The soft hum of the calf wrapped around Eva and Rowan like a protective cocoon, the flickering candlelight casting warm shadows against the worn wooden table where they sat. Fingers barely brushing but hearts beating loudly in the quiet space between them. Mira's little sanctuary was a world apart from the restless tension of the smoldering city outside, a place where the suffocating weight of the curse softened, if only just. Tonight they weren't two cautious souls, tiptoeing around the edge of disaster, but partners in a quiet revolution, crafting a new way of loving that defied the flame's merciless reach. Eva traced the rim of her coffee cup, eyes meeting Rowan's with a tentative spark. "We need to find a rhythm," she whispered, voice steady but edged with vulnerability. "Something that lets us feel without falling apart." Rowan nodded, his usual easy smile tempered by the gravity of their shared reality. "Measured moments," he agreed. "Not too much, not too little." Like embers warm but contained, they sketched out their ritual in soft murmurs, touching hands only when the city's pulse slowed, exchanging smiles that held unspoken promises but no overwhelming heat, speaking in whispers that carried the weight of truth without igniting the flame. Each gesture was a delicate dance, a balancing act between the intoxicating thrill of connection and the razor's edge of survival. Outside, the night air was cool, scented faintly with rain and the lingering trace of burnt wood. Later, they walked the quiet streets side by side, the world around them hushed, as if holding its breath. Rowan's hand found Eva's, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she let their fingers intertwine, grounding herself in the steady beat of his warmth. "We were rewriting the story," Eva said softly, her voice carried on the breeze. "Not just for us, but for everyone who's been afraid to love." Rowan's green eyes flickered, fierce and hopeful. "It's scary," he admitted. "But maybe that's what makes it worth it." Back in the shadows of the city, Detective Elias Thorne pored over ancient texts and recent reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. Across the room, Mira's fiery hair caught the lamplight as she listened, the fight in her eyes mirroring the determination in his. The curse was no longer an unchallengeable force, it was a puzzle, a riddle that could be unraveled with patience and courage. As dawn approached, Eva stood at her apartment window, Rowan's hand warm in hers. The city sprawled beneath them, scarred but alive, a testament to resilience. The curse still whispered in the corners, but tonight their hearts beat not in fear, but in defiant hope. "Whatever comes," Eva murmured, "we face it together." Rowan squeezed her hand, the ember of their love glowing steady and true. Together. Their journey was far from over, But in this fragile new balance, they had found a spark that could light the way forward, a promise that love, even when tempered by fear, could still burn bright. And as the first light of morning stretched across the smoldering city, Eva and Rowan stepped into the unknown, courage entwined with hope, ready to challenge a fate that once seemed unchangeable. The new dawn was bittersweet, but it was theirs. And in that, they found the strength to keep loving, to keep fighting, to keep dreaming of a future where fiery hearts could burn without fear. The morning air was crisp with the first light of dawn filtering through the skeletal branches of the city's towering trees. Eva stood by the window of her modest apartment, her eyes tracing the hazy outlines of the city's skyline where the faintest ember-like glow lingered in the cool air. Today was different. She could feel it in her bones, a ripple of something new, fragile yet insistent, threading through the cautious hearts of the people around her. Downstairs, the distant laughter of children playing echoed faintly. Leela had been insistent last night, her bright eyes sparkling with a recklessness Eva both admired and feared. "Come on," Leela had said, tugging at her sleeve. "You can't live in your shell forever. We have to start somewhere. Even if it's just a small spark." Reluctantly, Eva had agreed. Today, they would leave behind the suffocating safety of shadowed streets and step into the sun-drenched park where the city's pulse seemed, for once, less burdened by fear. The park was alive with cautious hope. Couples sat on benches, their hands tentatively brushing, eyes darting away as if afraid their own yearning might ignite the ancient curse. Children ran freely, their laughter a balm against the city's oppressive silence. Bright autumn leaves scattered the ground in fiery hues, reds, oranges, and golds, colors that seemed to mock the deadly flame lurking just beneath the surface of every stolen glance. Leela's smile was infectious as she pulled Eva into the crowd. "See, it's not so bad," she whispered, her voice a mixture of triumph and challenge. "Love doesn't have to be fear. We can be the ones to prove it." Eva's gaze drifted to a small girl clutching a worn doll, her wide eyes reflecting a curiosity and innocence that pierced through Eva's carefully constructed walls. Harper, Mira's younger cousin, was a symbol of tomorrow, untouched yet by the curse's cruel hand. Harper's presence was a reminder of the stakes, of the future Eva and Rowan were fighting to protect. Later, as the afternoon waned, Eva found herself sitting beside Harper on a weathered park bench. The girl's questions came softly but with the clarity only a child could wield. "Why do people have to be afraid to love?" Harper asked, her voice a whisper almost lost in the rustling leaves. Eva swallowed the lump in her throat, searching for words that could bridge the chasm between hope and fear. "Because," she began gently, "sometimes love can hurt. But that doesn't mean it isn't worth it." Harper nodded solemnly, her innocence lending weight to the sentiment. "I want to believe it's always worth it." As dusk painted the sky in hues of violet and amber, Eva and Rowan found themselves atop an old rooftop overlooking the city. Below, the streets glowed faintly, embers flickering like distant stars against the coming night. The city breathed beneath them, a living, aching heart of flame and shadow. Rowan's hand found Eva's, their fingers intertwining in a quiet pledge. "We were not alone," he murmured, his voice steady despite the tempest of emotions swirling within. "Every small act of courage, every moment we choose love over fear, it ripples through this city." Eva leaned into him, the warmth of his presence a beacon against the cold uncertainty. "Maybe one day," she whispered, "these embers will grow into a fire that can't be burned out." Their resolve was a fragile flame, but a flame nonetheless, a spark of defiance in a city long shadowed by despair. That evening, Mira's cafe hummed with an energy that had been missing for too long. Neighbors, survivors, and dreamers gathered in the warm glow of lanterns and candlelight. Stories tumbled forth of loss, yes, but also of love fought for and won, of moments stolen from the jaws of the curse's relentless hunger. Mira moved through the crowd, her laughter bright and unwavering. "We are more than the curse," she declared, raising a glass. We are the stories that refuse to end in ashes. Eva caught Rowan's eye across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. Their love, tempered by patience and sacrifice, was becoming a symbol, a beacon for those who dared to hope. Outside, the city settled into night, embers glowing softly beneath the surface, waiting. And for the first time in a long time, those embers seemed less like a warning and more like a promise. As Eva and Rowan stepped out into the cool air, hand in hand, the future stretched before them, uncertain, dangerous, but alive with possibility. They were no longer just survivors of the flame. They were its challengers. And in that challenge lay the fragile, fierce hope of tomorrow. The cafe was a sanctuary from the city's smoldering streets, a rare pocket of warmth and calm nestled amid the shadows of fear that clung to every corner. Inside, the soft murmur of quiet conversations mingled with the clink of coffee cups and the faint crackle of the fireplace. But in the dimly lit corner where Eva and Rowan sat, the world seemed to shrink until it consisted of little more than the space between them. Eva's fingers trembled slightly as she traced the rim of her cup, her stormy grey eyes flickering between the dancing flames in the hearth and the intense green gaze that held her captive across the small table. The air was thick with unspoken words and the weight of everything they had endured to arrive at this moment, this fragile, trembling moment where hope and fear intertwined like the embers of a dying fire. "I don't want to lose you." Rowan's voice was barely more than a whisper, raw with vulnerability and fierce with determination. His fingers reached across the table, brushing a loose strand of hair behind Eva's ear with a tenderness that belied the storm inside him. "But I'm here. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." Eva swallowed hard, her heart pounding in a rhythm that felt dangerously close to setting her ablaze. "I want to believe that," she admitted, her voice quivering as she leaned forward, bridging the gap between caution and longing. "But every time I get close, I feel the curse creeping in like it's waiting to consume us both." Rowan's hand found hers, the warmth of his skin seeping through the layers of fabric and straight into her guarded heart. "Then we fight it. Together. We write our own story, one measured moment at a time, no rushing, no reckless flames, just whispers and promises." A fragile smile cracked Eva's guarded exterior, the first genuine light she had allowed herself in months. "Whispers and promises," she echoed, the words tasting like hope and danger all at once. Outside the cafe's fogged windows, the city's glow flickered, the distant siren of an emergency piercing the night and pulling the shadows a little closer. Eva's breath hitched, a familiar chill crawling down her spine. The curse was never far, its presence a silent, whispering threat that lurked behind every stolen glance and every shared smile. Rowan noticed the sudden shift in her expression and tightened his grip on her hand, grounding her with a steady warmth. "We were not alone," he said softly, nodding toward the back of the cafe, where Mira and Detective Thorne stood in quiet conversation. "There are others who believe in us, who believe that love can survive this." Mira's fiery red hair caught the light as she smiled at Eva with fierce loyalty shining in her hazel eyes. Detective Thorne's sharp features were etched with worry. But there was a spark of resolve there too, a silent vow to uncover the truth behind the curse and protect those who dared to love. In that moment, amidst whispered promises and the flickering embers of a fragile hope, Eva and Rowan felt the weight of the city's curse lessen just a little. Their love, though tentative and fraught with peril, had become a beacon, a small, defiant flame burning bright enough to challenge the darkness. But the night was far from over, and the path ahead remained uncertain. As Eva leaned into Rowan's steady presence, their hearts beating slow and steady against the backdrop of a city that feared the fire of love, they knew there was only one choice left: to embrace the dangerous devotion that defined them. To hold on to each other and to the whispered promises that might just be enough to save them both. The fire outside might rage, but inside their love whispered on, fragile, fierce, and unyielding. And as the last embers of the night glowed softly beneath the city's smoldering skies, Eva and Rowan's story continued, one measured breath, one whispered promise at a time. The city lay beneath a heavy veil of smoke and twilight, its familiar glow dimmed by the persistent curse that clung to every street and shadow. From their vantage point on the modest balcony of the apartment they now shared, Eva and Rowan gazed out over the smoldering skyline. The fire's their orange embers pulsated like a heartbeat, a constant reminder of the city's frailty and the deadly weight they carried. Eva's fingers tightened around Rowan's, a small but fierce gesture of solidarity. Her stormy grey eyes, usually guarded and cautious, shimmered with a new light, a mixture of resolve and fragile hope. "We still here," she whispered, voice soft but steady. "Against everything." Rowan's intense green eyes flickered in the fading light, reflecting the flames below and the embers of their slow-burning love. "We are," he agreed, his tone both a comfort and a challenge to the darkness that threatened them. "And we'll keep fighting, together." The curse, the flame, remained an omnipresent force, a whisper at the edges of every emotional moment, a threat that could ignite their passion into ruin. Yet, where once fear had shackled them, now courage began to take root. Their journey had not been easy. Months of measured words, stolen glances, and cautious touch had led them here to a place where love no longer meant surrender but strength. They had learned the power of restraint, the delicate balance of patience and desire, and in that balance, they found a fierce kind of freedom. Inside the apartment, the soft hum of the city was punctuated by laughter and the clinking of cups. Mira's cafe had become their sanctuary, a beacon of warmth and defiance. On more than one occasion, Eva found herself lost in the comfort of Mira's vibrant presence, the bright red hair, the lively hazel eyes, and the colorful scarves that seemed to wrap the whole room in hope. Tonight, the cafe buzzed with quiet conversations and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Rowan leaned against the counter, sharing a rare smile with Mira, who was bustling between tables with effortless grace. The community they had built here, small but resolute, was a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be extinguished. Across town, Detective Elias Thorne sat alone in his dimly lit office. The soft glow of candlelight flickered against the walls lined with ancient manuscripts and brittle maps. His sharp features were drawn tight with concentration, shadowed eyes scanning the faded text for any clue that might unravel the curse's origins. Each new discovery brought both dread and determination. He traced a finger along a passage describing the ancient tragedy that had seeded the flame, a story of love and loss, passion and punishment. It was a painful mirror of Eva's and Rowan's own struggles, yet it also hinted at a deeper truth, that the curse was not invincible. Back in the quiet park beneath the aged oak tree, Eva and Rowan found solace in each other's presence. The night air was cool, the leaves whispering softly overhead as their fingers entwined. The world beyond seemed to hold its breath, tensed between fear and hope. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rowan met her gaze, his ember-like eyes steady and warm. "Every day. But whatever comes, we face it together. That's our strength." In that moment, the city's curse felt less like a chain and more like a challenge, a call to courage and connection that neither of them could ignore. As the hours deepened, their love remained a fragile flame against the vast darkness, a promise that even in a world scorched by fear, there was still room for hope, for tenderness, for a future that burned bright. And as dawn approached, casting pale light over the smoldering city, Eva and Rowan prepared to write the next chapter of their story, one of resilience, of restraint, and of a love that dared to endure. But the flame was watching, waiting. Would their courage be enough to outlast the fire? The city held its breath. Outside, the first hints of sunlight filtered through heavy clouds, painting the horizon with streaks of gold and rose. The streets, scarred by past combustions and whispered fears, began to stir with tentative life. Eva stood at the window, watching the city awaken, the weight of the curse pressing gently on her shoulders, yet no longer crushing her spirit. She turned to Rowan, who was gathering their few belongings for the day ahead. "Whatever happens," she said, "I want you to know I'm glad we're redoing this. Together." Rowan smiled, a rare softness in his ember-green eyes. "Me too, Eva, me too." They stepped out into the uncertain morning, hearts aflame yet steady, ready to face the unknown with a love that burned not to destroy, but to endure. And in that choice, they found their greatest strength yet. The city breathed beneath them, a tapestry of muted lights and the faintest glimmers of smoke curling like restless spirits into the twilight. Eva stood beside Rowan on the rooftop, their hands interlaced, fingers trembling not from cold but from the weight of the choice they had made. Below, the streets smoldered with old scars, the remnants of passion turned peril, the cruel legacy of the flame that had haunted this place for generations. But tonight, in this fragile moment suspended between dusk and darkness, the curse seemed to hold its breath. Evangeline Hart's stormy grey eyes searched Rowan's intense green ones, finding there a mirror of her own fierce resolve. "We can't live half-lives anymore," she whispered, her voice steady despite the years of fear that clung to her like a shroud. "Not just surviving, but truly living, loving. Even if it means risking everything." Rowan's sun-kissed complexion flushed under the weight of her words, a flicker of ember-like warmth blooming in his gaze. "Together," he said simply. "We face it, whatever comes. No more measured glances or whispered warnings. We burn bright, or not at all." The city around them pulsed with a silent, smoldering tension, as if the ancient flame itself was listening. For decades, the curse had sown fear, carving wounds into the hearts of everyone who dared to feel. But now, Eva and Rowan's defiance was more than rebellion, it was a beacon, a promise that love's power was not merely to destroy, but to transform. Later, in the warm embrace of Mira's cafe, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of roasted coffee and hope. The small room hummed softly with quiet conversations and the gentle clinking of cups. Mira, ever the vibrant soul with her bright red hair and colorful scarves, moved among the gathered friends and neighbors with the ease of someone who refused to be beaten by despair. Eva stood before the group, her voice resonant with newfound strength. "I've lived with the fear of this curse for so long," she began, "but tonight I choose to live with love instead. Not because it's safe, but because it's real, because it's worth every risk." Mira's hazel eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed, and the room responded with nods and murmurs of agreement. In a city where the flame of passion meant death, this gathering was a quiet revolution, a collective breath drawn against the chokehold of fatalism. Meanwhile, in a dim office cluttered with ancient texts and fading photographs, Detective Elias Thorne sat hunched over a desk, bathed in the soft glow of an oil lantern. The rustling pages of a centuries-old manuscript whispered secrets as he traced his finger along the faded script. Hours of relentless investigation led him to a passage previously overlooked, a legend speaking of choice, balance, and the possibility of tempering the curse through conscious, measured love. His sharp features softened in the lamplight, a flicker of cautious excitement sparking beneath his skeptical exterior. The curse, long thought an immutable force, might have a chink in its fiery armor, a glimmer of hope born not from magic alone, but from the courage of those willing to face the flame. Back beneath the vast canopy of stars, Eva and Rowan found solace in the quiet night. The cool air carried the scent of ash and rain, mingling with the steady rhythm of their breathing. They spoke little, their hearts communicating in whispers and glances, the kind of dialogue forged in shared trials and unspoken fears. "If we burn," Rowan murmured, fingers tracing the line of Eva's jaw, "let's burn bright. Let's become the light this city needs." A bittersweet smile curved Eva's lips, the ache of past losses softened by the fierce warmth of present love. "Together," she echoed, "we'll rewrite what it means to love here." Their promise hung in the air, fragile as embers yet as potent as wildfire. The flame might still flicker in the shadows, ready to consume. But Eva and Rowan's hearts blazed defiantly, a testament to the power of love to challenge even the darkest fate. As the first tendrils of dawn brushed the horizon, casting a soft glow over the smoldering city, the two stood side by side, burning bright, unyielding, and fearless in their devotion. The curse was far from broken, but its grip had loosened, held at bay by the courage of those who dared to love beyond fear. And in the quiet crackle of the waking city, hope whispered anew. The first light of dawn stretched gently across the city, casting long shadows that danced with the promise of a new day. Eva stood beside Rowan atop the hill overlooking the smoldering rooftops, the cool morning air brushing softly against their faces. Their fingers intertwined, an unspoken vow held in the simple act of touch. The city below was still cloaked in the lingering haze of the night's embers, a reminder of the curse that had shaped every heartbeat, every breath, every cautious glance between lovers for as long as anyone could remember. Evangeline Hart, whose life had been a careful navigation of shadows and fears, felt the fragile warmth of the sunrise stir something long dormant within her. Rowan's steady presence beside her was both a comfort and a challenge, a living contradiction to the warnings carved into her soul. They had walked this precarious path together, inching toward a love that burned bright yet careful, a fire tempered by patience and courage. "It's beautiful," Rowan whispered, his voice low and warm, eyes reflecting the fiery glow of the dawn. "Not just the sunrise, but this moment, us." Eva nodded, her stormy grey eyes searching his intense green ones, flickering like embers in the morning light. "It's fragile," she said softly, "like the city itself. But maybe fragile is where hope lives." Their journey had been marked by loss and fear, the ever-present threat of combustion shadowing their every move. Yet here they stood, choosing to embrace a love that defied the curse's cruel grip. It was an act of rebellion, a declaration that the heart's yearning could not be extinguished by ancient flames. Later, in the warm sanctuary of Mira's cafe, the scent of fresh coffee and pastries mingled with quiet laughter and the gentle murmur of friends gathered in defiance of despair. Eva and Rowan shared a moment of stillness amid the comforting chaos, their gazes locked in a silent conversation of hopes and fears. Mira bustled between tables, her bright red hair a beacon of fiery optimism. "You two are a spark," she said, sliding a cup of tea toward Eva. "A spark this city desperately needs." Eva smiled, the tension easing from her shoulders. "We were trying," she said. "Trying to hold on to each other without burning out." Rowan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "Slowly," he agreed. "Measured love, that's our way forward." But even in this haven, the whisper of the flame lingered. Detective Elias Thorne approached quietly, his trench coat damp from the morning rain. His sharp eyes held both wariness and determination. "The curse isn't gone," he said softly, "but neither is the city's will to fight it. There are ways ancient, dangerous, but ways to weaken it." Eva's heart quickened. Then maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's just the beginning. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle mist, washing away remnants of fear and grief. In the nearby park, laughter echoed as Lila and Harper chased each other beneath the budding trees. Their carefree joy was a fragile light, a future worth fighting for. Eva and Rowan watched from a nearby bench, their hands still joined, their breaths synchronized with the rhythm of the awakening world. They carried the weight of history and the promise of what could be. The curse remained, a shadow cast by generations of pain, but their love, fierce, careful, and unwavering, was a beacon in the darkness. "We can't erase the past," Eva murmured, "but we can choose how we live with it, how we love with it." Rowan squeezed her hand gently. "Together. Always." As the city stirred beneath the bittersweet dawn, Ava and Rowan faced the uncertain future with a courage born of fire and faith. Their love was a fragile flame, yes, but a flame that refused to be snuffed out. And in that defiant light, the city found a new hope. The wind carried the scent of smoke mingled with the fresh morning air, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the embroidered curtains of Eva's modest apartment. She stirred awake, fingers brushing against the small vial of ashes resting on her bedside table, a relic of loss, a symbol of her guarded heart. Yet today, the vial felt lighter, as if the weight of despair had lifted ever so slightly. Rowan's voice came softly through the open window where he stood, watching the awakening city. "It's a new day, Eva. One we get to write ourselves." She smiled, stepping to the window to join him. The city below was alive with cautious hope, people moving with a tentative grace, hearts still wary but daring to beat a little faster. "We'll carry the flame," Eva said, "but we won't let it consume us, and if it tries," Rowan asked, his eyes locking with hers. "Then we'll burn together," she replied, fierce and tender. The city's curse was ancient, its flames unyielding, but within the hearts of two lovers, it found a new story to tell, one of courage, sacrifice, and the bittersweet beauty of love that dares to burn bright against the darkness. The dawn was theirs, fragile, fierce, and full of promise. As the sun climbed higher, Eva and Rowan stepped back into the city's pulse, their presence a quiet rebellion against fear. Conversations hushed as they passed. Eyes once filled with dread now flickered with the possibility of something more. Behind them, Mira's cafe buzzed with life, Ilias's investigations whispered of hope, and the laughter of children like Harper echoed as a reminder of what was at stake. The flame still whispered, still flickered in the shadows. But Eva and Rowan had learned to listen, not just to its warnings, but to the steady beat of their own hearts, a rhythm that no curse could silence. Their love was a bittersweet dawn, a fragile light that would carry them through whatever nights lay ahead.